Well, but I wonder, as a community and a town, if we should have a conversation about whether this board should continue to handle all of the budget, or whether we should talk about an ordinance and an elected budget.
A lot of other towns, they have a separate committee that
Long Island does?
is a budget. I don't know about Long Island.
Yeah, they
but
do.
Do they
Finance
have a
committee.
separate committee that some Long Island people and then people from other,
An appointed,
I think
committee?
they're usually appointed, Mark, not typically elected. I don't
they're
know.
appointed from the ones that I've known, they're appointed by selectmen or by the council.
Right.
sorry. Nope.
But you know, could you have a wrap up at the end where you do the town and the school budget together as a major, you know, like here's what the plan is, or is that town meeting?
It's
'Cause I
really,
mean, that would be the other thing, is to have, you know, one meeting where people could, you know, it seems like we get questions at town meeting that should have been asked before.
Well,
town.
last year, the school prepared for that budget presentation and not a single person showed up.
So most of the time that the budget, the school presents their budget to us. And sometimes it's not usually finalized.
Right.
They're waiting on certain numbers. Hopefully
And
this
yeah,
year
and
it's
last year they
finalized.
planned a PowerPoint
So-
and came here and they had
And then
handouts.
ours, we have it on here. So the final budget presentation and review. So kind of do that, not like a,
I guess I looked at Long Island's presentation. Have you looked at their site? So they do a public presentation, but they do a good job of sort of putting it in the context of, you know, what's been the trend over the past several years, which departments have increased, which have decreased, how's their debt service, you know, kind of like, you know, health report of the town, find, you know, what's their revenues, how has that changed their tax base? I thought, when you look at their, and it's like, I don't know, 10 or 15 slides. It's not so much about the details of the budget. It's more the big picture. Then what's the mill rate? What does that translate into for, well, now you probably have to use a $300,000 home, but you know, what does it translate into for each homeowner in terms of an increase, that kind of stuff. I think that's valuable. And it would, you know, it would, to me, be worth doing, just to give people kind of the context.
yeah, without wasting time, and I'm sorry, but if there was a group either appointed or elected, I don't know what the number of people would be as far as the count, but they could focus on that. This group
Yeah, sorry.
focuses on this for a period of time, but it takes us away from regular business and planning and projects and, you know.
That would that be something you'd have to do at town meeting, you know, create a budget committee? I mean, or is it something?
I think we would have to decide as a town and a community whether this board would have the power to appoint that group or whether we wanted it sort of an ordinance and elected. I think that would probably be the decision. Or if we wanted it all.
well, because, I mean, well, we have the power to start a committee. We'd have the final say on the budget either way.
Well, town meeting has fun saying, but
Well, that's it. Yeah.
they can shoot.
All right, let me start this meeting. Budget workshop, second draft. It is 6:04 on February 22nd, 2023. And I'll hand this off to Mark.
Thank you. Vika, I thought you might want to take a moment and just let us know how you did interpreting the tape and the notes and this next draft that you've given us.
So what I did is I took the 5 pages of the notes that Bob was so kind to forward to me, and I went through those, and then I listened to half the meeting. It took me about 3.5 hours to do that and go through and do the notes, and then the rest of it, I skimmed through it. And so what I did is, for the sake of these changes, just because I didn't have, with the selectmen's meeting, there wasn't a lot of time in between. I put in the changes for this report that I understood were a consensus change. And then I did not make any changes to things where there was the question of change unless Vika says otherwise, because I figured, you know, I can give you an explanation for whatever that line item might be, and then you can decide whether that needs to be changed or not. So that way there isn't repetitive work being done. And then I went through and kind of tried finding answers for just about, what I noticed is a lot of this was just a discussion or needed more information or needed more clarification. I find in that as best as I could in, you know, the week that I had to work on it. And I think I have questions or answers for most of it. Some of it is still pending, but I figured that you can kind of gauge in how you want to go through and answer the questions or get the answers to the questions that you guys have.
Okay, I would like to ask, what is the will or consensus of the select board as far as how you would like to attack the departmental budgets tonight? Would you like to do it the same way that we did it last time? Or would you like me to go to Department A, ask if there's anybody that has any questions or changes and take whoever does? Or would you like an opportunity for each select person separately? Would you like the same opportunity that we had last time?
I think it makes sense to go through, like you said, department, and then say, you know, who still has questions on this for Vika or whatever, and tackle it that way,
Okay,
instead of one at a time going through the whole budget.
okay,
And if it helps, I can start by trying to go through some of the questions,
go ahead.
department by
You're gonna
department.
start
that you
with,
guys have.
you're gonna start with administration?
Sure,
You're gonna start with administration?
yeah, I can do that, yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, so administration, the biggest discussion that appeared that took place, there was a lot of it. So the first one was in reference to the computers and the expenses with the technology.
Yeah.
What I did is I actually had a meeting with Ion. I did agree with Bob's statement about, you know, possibly looking into the future to explore other tech companies and see where we stand at this point, how far we are into the budget. We have a good relationship with the tech company that we have. We know what you can get from them. I would be really hesitant to try to do that now, just because we have so much going on already. But what I did do is talk to them about the primary question that was raised in terms of the shared email account versus everyone having their own account. And there were questions about the cost breakdown. So there are a few options about that. So currently, with the technology line, the significant increase that's being added to it is a one-time fee of $5,700, and that is to replace 3 computers in the office. When Marjorie was here, what we did for a couple of years is we tried replacing like 1 computer each budget. And then we transitioned, adding more services once we started having a better relationship with Ion on networking. Her leaving, COVID hitting, 3 town administrators within a 2-year time frame, that fell off. And what we're noticing is the 3 computers, they're they're outdated and they're not working and they're really slow. If you don't want to put the investment in replacing all 3 of them, I would at least highly recommend doing 1 of them, because our bookkeeper really struggles. The computer just constantly spent. It's just really slow. But this cost, what it does is includes the computers, it includes the iCloud backup, all of the security, all of the, so what they do is they come in and they add everything. And so when they're done, we sit on it as if nothing had ever been done, and it all gets backed up. So it's the physical computers and then everything else that goes into it, including, you know, emails and stuff. So that's a $5,700 one-time cost. For selectmen to each of them have an email address. And talking to the company, they said that standard practice with municipalities that they work with, selectmen have their own email addresses. And it's usually their first and last name or first initial last name. And that it is very easy for them to, when a selectman leaves, to just replace the names. And that's all part of the cost with us having Microsoft 365. So for selectmen to each have their own email address, like bbupre@townofshebigisland.org, and for each one of you, that's a $732 cost per year.
Per
Because it's,
person.
nope, for all of them.
Oh,
So
all.
for all 5 selectmen to have an email address, those emails would be protected, and the information would go into the iCloud, or whatever their cloud is that they reference. And that would be, they would set everything up, and then you would use whatever personal computers or whatever device that you have. So that's that. For, to have one shared email, that cost is $146.40. You're essentially paying for one email address. So you're saving, $500 a year. And they recommended to not do that, for the reason that, it would be, select persons at townofshebigisland.org. Somebody emailed that email address. Selectmen would have to collectively decide who would be responsible for responding, but each of you would have the ability to respond. And so and the example that we used is, if there is ever a freedom of access request, they could be very specific in the sense, and we've had them in the past, minor ones where, I want what the chair responded, or I want, if there was a freedom request against one specific selectman, it would be really difficult to distinguish who responded or how that works, because the 5 of you would share one email address and 5 of you would have access to it. As far as the, Carol had mentioned, having kind of a distribution list as what he referred it to. So if you go on the town website, there could be, contact selectmen, click here, select person at townofshebigisland.org. They can create that, but you could have one email address, or each one of you have your own email address, and that selectmen at townofshebigisland.org would go to each one of you, and then each one of you could respond as you please. So it depends on what the preference is.
Yeah, and Vika, I was talking more about a web page, so like Vinyl Haven has, so you could ask Marjorie. So they have a web page with a form, and there is no email.
Yeah, and that's something, that is something, like I said, with the website upgrade, that's one of the things that they're predicting, or they're saying will be available with the web page upgrade. So you can, under code enforcement, under selectmen, under whichever, you can have kind of a note where you could say, contact.
So what I would disagree with Ion, because there are a lot of towns that use just selectmen. But like Vinyl Haven, for example, has the web form, which I think has some advantages. And then they have phone numbers for all of the select board members. And a lot of towns are doing it that way. They have phone numbers and, and I think it's partly to consolidate the communication. I think one challenge that, select boards run into is people, we've seen it here, people emailing only some of the selectmen, or some of the legal stuff didn't get to some of us. So I'm not married to the idea of a single selectman email, but I think in terms of uniformity of operation and communication, and what I talked to the town of Raymond, and what they do is they just have an auto response when the email comes in to the select board that says, thank you, we received your email, you'll be hearing back. And typically it's the chair that responds unless there's a reason for something else. So I think if you have a protocol, I mean, I don't know how many towns Ion works with, do they work with? a
So
lot
I
of
did,
towns?
so, and I did explain that to him, and he said that what, in the behind the scenes, typically what they have set up is, if you want that on the town webpage, it would be kind of, through the website, the message. And then it would be sent, but then each one of you would have your own email address that's not publicly advertised, but it comes to each one of you. And then, you could set up an email where it generates an automatic response, and then you can all respond as please. So they could be done that way to be more. The other thing that he said that is part of our package that we already have, which I am gonna go forth with because it's no added cost, it's already included in what we pay, is something that he referred to as a SharePoint folder. So it's similar to Google Docs, and he said that it could be secured in a way where they could set it up for us, and it's included in the cost of what we already paid for, and provide email address to the people who have access to. So if I share, we can have a folder where it's Board of Selectmen budget or this or that, and then as I upload it, you have access, and then it's just one general place where that information is shared versus me sending out email after email after email with documents. So I think there's a couple of different ways in moving forward to improving. I think the overall communication is just about what your preference is.
Yeah, and I'll leave it up to the group. I would suggest we start using SharePoint like yesterday, because I use it for work. Bob use Dropbox or something, I don't know. But I mean, the shared drive thing saves a lot of email correspondence. And also the documents reside there, so
Yeah.
we don't have to, we're all shuffling through our emails to find the one, like, the budget one.
Yeah.
Because that was the only place it existed, was in the email.
Yes.
So I think we should start doing that right away. We should probably set up folders for both Gallagher, the Gallagher, whatever,
Yep.
that particular project. But, my primary goal is to get us on the town email. So we're not using our personal emails, and it's up to you guys how I'm fine with the computer. I guess I jumped into this one, and I probably shouldn't. I'm fine with the computer expenditures. The only question I have is for Public Works. I noticed it's a very low-end computer. I don't know where they're gonna be using it in the Public Works building. And if that's the case, you might want to think of just the opposite of kind of a ruggedized laptop, which is more expensive, but is more durable. A regular computer, and thinking of the public safety building, not the Public Works Department building, not real
They
compatible.
have that little side room that we walked into with their little desk and kitchenette thing, and so that's where they have.
Yeah,
the
and
other
do they have
computers.
Wi-Fi there?
Yes,
They have to believe so.
I believe they do.
They couldn't do anything.
Well, yeah, but
I'd have to look into it.
yeah, we'll just make sure that we don't need the budget for that.
Yeah, they just use it on
So
the
it's-
table. there.
I don't want to misspeak, but I believe when Axiom became a thing, or when Shabig.net became a thing, that all town departments have free Wi-Fi. The reason that the town office is paying is because we upgraded to the high speed
Fiber optic.
fiber. But I believe that's the case, but I don't want to speak 100%.
Can I make a, go ahead.
Two things. One, Carol, it sounds like you saw an itemization of what the detail was on the per PC cost.
It's right here in the quote that Vika sent us.
I didn't see that.
I can give it to you if you want to look at it.
And,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't either.
That was a couple, the first time
Uh-oh.
I, again, want to reiterate, having one more email address that's bo@town-of-Shabig isn't going to make life simple. If it does, it's 5 years away, because Bo's already got a bunch of emails in his personal computer to bo@Fairpoint or whatever it is, that if there was an FOA, he's going to have to search, or somebody's going to have to search all of Bo's computer, but also all of bo@town-of-Shabig. So I just want to not have us falsely believing that switching to each of us having our own town email address is gonna change things. It's not gonna change things right away. I don't think it's ever gonna change things, because people are still gonna email Bo with whatever email address they have in their computer. And they're going to the select board and then having it sent out to each of us individually would streamline things. So I would opt for that, and that's the cheapest of the options that we've talked about.
Well, when I spoke to them, what they recommended, they said that, and you're right, I completely agree with you. Because I still have people send me work-related stuff to personal emails, because that's the email. What he said, that the benefit of doing it this way is, streamlining it, so on the website, it goes to, it just says your email and the selectmen versus each individual email. But then having those individual selectmen is that all of those emails get stored in the iCloud, and then you can, if there's a freedom of access, then it's easy for the tech company. And then slowly you're transitioning out of, and hopefully with every new selectman. And he totally agreed. He said, it's you're so far behind in how your town is using personal email addresses that it's going to be time consuming, but this is the first step. And he said, with the cost difference is $500 or $530. He said that it would make it simpler to just have each one, and then you can, because you can, forward your town of Shebig, your personal emails, or you can do it however you want. But then the biggest benefit he felt was that it's all then protected and stored under the town umbrella of, in their iCloud or wherever it is they keep that stuff. So.
One other point I wanted to make relative to share file. Carol would be extremely comfortable in that environment. I'm extremely comfortable in that environment. It's the difference between push and pull. And it's, right now, what we all have is push. When Vika's got something she wants us to see, it shows up in your inbox. So if we go to share file, Vika's gonna put the budget report out in a folder. And unless you go check, you're not gonna know that's there. Unless Vika sends you an email saying it's there. If Vika sends you an email saying it's there, that's still the same number of emails. The benefit of it is that it's a clean repository. You don't have to go searching through your emails to find stuff. If you think in terms of folder structures, I'm gonna go into share file, there's budget, there's McKee Gallagher, there's whatever. And then you can dig around in those folders to find what you want. So I think going to share file would be a good thing to do, having a central repository. And also that means that we'll have a backup copy on the town's cloud server.
Yeah, and that's what the biggest thing was. All of this ends up going in one location where it's protected.
So I hate beating the dead horse, but then we keep talking about technology and how we're gonna use more technology to do more emails, more sharing on the town website and everything like that. Still gotta use my own personal computer.
Yep. I can't support
So
the town spending money on personal computers for this.
I understand, but I had to spend my own money to buy a computer so that I can do Zoom. So and that's all I use it for. Just solely, I don't use a computer to do anything else other than town stuff. I just don't. My wife does all the paperwork for the town, for the business and all that. I literally, whatever kind of app I use on this, that's all I use. But as far as my computer, solely Zoom. I'll use it for anything
So
else.
for tonight,
So,
is there a way that we can prioritize the number of computers that we think we would like to fund to replace, the upgrade to the website or not, and any annual cost? Can we come up with a number that we can agree on that will go forward in this
I think-
administrative budget?
Yeah, for me, the computer replacements are not a huge chunk of change. They're, $1,000 a piece, plus a monitor. So,
Yeah, so to replace 3 computers and have them set everything up is $5,700, and that's a one-time fee.
Yeah,
I'm personally okay with that.
go ahead, Bill.
I agree with Harold on that. The only thing that I'd like to see is maybe a planned schedule on when to get a new computer, like when does that one get replaced or something.
Yeah, and I would suggest we develop, it doesn't have to be a big plan, but a technology plan, because I think the website's gonna need a major upgrade, because mentioned that, and so we should incorporate whatever else we need at the time, so.
And that's, yeah, with the $3,000 increase for the town website was a big shock when I received that email. And so I had a Zoom meeting with the company and, you know, they explained all the benefits, and we've paid $900 a year for our website. Since I've been there 1 year, I convinced Marjorie to do an upgrade, and it cost us $1,200 for the year. And it upgraded to now where you see, you know, the picture versus, it was even more minimal before. So $3,900 a year versus $900 is a huge jump. But there are more current and up-to-date benefits that I think, you know, anyone who is using internet and technology in the current day and age is expecting with websites. So
I'm sorry, this is not my area of strength. So where do the select board members and the town administrator think that we are on the requested $10,200 or 51.10 increase? Where are we with the proposed number? Go ahead.
I'm fine with the proposed number. It's really a question, the complete number, it's a question of whether we want to subtract $500 and have one email or keep the 5 emails as budgeted. That's really, to me, personally, everything else is hardware.
And
There's also an email for the fire department and the public works.
and I'm gonna need to hear, you know, benefits of that one more time quickly, because again, it's not my strength. So if we can quickly.
So in the admin, I just want to make sure you guys are clear about it. The $5,700 increase just for this year is for the 3 computers that need to be replaced in the town office.
Right.
And then in addition, fire department, who isn't even set up or backed up, and public works too, that's within those departments.
Yeah. Separately, they're in.
Right.
I just got a quick question. The email, if we go with the email route, and we have like one selectmen at whatever.com, and then people can go to that and send it, and then it gets rerouted to all of us on our separate emails. Is that gonna cost us the $500, or is that gonna cost us?
So that would cost
$100?
us, so if there's one email address, selectpersons@townofshibigisland.org, it would be $142 and change. And it would be, what they would do is they would set it up, so, you know, it's that one email to the public, and it would get distributed to 5 of you, so 5 of you would have access. If you respond, you know, it would be coming from all 5 of you, basically. But not knowing, and that was, he kind of strongly urged that, you know, for $500, just make a clear line and have everyone be different, but he didn't really care, because it wouldn't matter to them how the setup would be.
We're gonna have,
Yeah, as much as I hate as much as I hate spending the money, I think going ahead and getting on track with each of us having a town email, it's not gonna make any difference to our 10 years unless we're still here 15 years from now. But eventually it will make a difference, and for FOA stuff and for backup, I think it's important to make sure that everybody's covered. I backed my computer up twice. I have 2 separate backups in addition to my computer, because I'm an idiot, but I know not everybody does that. So I can find all the town stuff we've ever communicated as a group if we need to, but I'm not always gonna be on the select board. And I think having the records in the cloud as per
And
select
that's
board
considered
stuff.
permanent record, and I think that's another step.
So what's gonna happen when I roll off the select board, the email address, Bob@selectboard or whatever, that'll just be dead, and new person at select board will now be up on that.
Yeah,
list.
so he said there's two ways of doing it that way. He said that, you know, let's say, we'll use Bo as an example. Create his, you know, he'll be Beaupre at Town Big Island, and he would have a record of all his emails. He leaves in June, July 1st, we get another person. The tech company can just add the new name to the existing email, and they have a record of everything, or archive that, keep that clean, and then create it, so then they start fresh. So it's how the town wants to do it.
And
I
they'll do
think
either of those for the same cost.
that's all included within, yeah.
Then I think we should bite the bullet, have one address to make it easier for constituents. It just says, email to the select board, click here. Have it route to Mark at Town of Shabig, Bo at Town of Shabig, Jen at Town of Shabig. And then when Jen rolls off or somebody rolls off, I would recommend the archive route, we can decide that at that time. But I think upgrading our technology, the way you've got it laid out here, including upgrading your website, so that we can do things like a page where you enter your comment instead of sending an email. I think that's going to be beneficial for all kinds of reasons. And as we go
Make
forward,
them short.
it will make them shorter, and it'll make us less subject to being spammed and hacked. That's
And
one
that
of
was the
reasons.
other thing that he suggested, that he said is that's definitely, yeah.
I hate taking $10,000 up or whatever that number is, but I think we need to do it.
So
Okay.
Go ahead.
is your recommendation leaving the budgeted amount the same?
Yep.
Okay. That's your answer.
Is that the consensus? 'Cause I'm fine with it from what I've heard.
Yeah.
And may I ask if, thank you for that, Vika. May I ask if there are any other line items that any select person or the town administrator would like to talk about? Go ahead.
Line item 3160 miscellaneous expenses. That's what you want me to,
Yeah, which one?
3160.
Thank you.
We expended 22, 35, whatever, 23 was 5,600. Year to date right now is 52 something. And you're projecting $450.
So
So
the
just wondering
$450, the last couple of years is what the budgeted number has been. Miscellaneous, expenses account is just essentially used for us to siphon money through and then do journal entries. If you look at, the committed taxes or the committed warrant that we have, and I've been on the phone with, Trio about this, it says that it's $450. But for some reason on year to date, or for some reason on the 2023 budget, it's saying that we budgeted $3,500. We didn't. We budgeted $450, and it shows it on the warrant, it shows it in the computer. For some reason on this report, it's coming up. And so I have a ticket out to them to try to fix it, but they couldn't figure it out. So it's, we didn't budget, I guess the long story short is, we didn't budget $5,600 last year for any reason. It was $450. It's just this glitch will not go away.
Okay.
So,
That continues. Okay. The next one is the 3240 is publications. Is that typically where we put the town, like whatever we print for the town meeting?
That goes under printing. So printing and publications, as you could see in publications, nothing's been budgeted under it in the last few years. It's just one of those line items that's just been there. Printing is where we, charge printing of the annual town, meeting, a town report, which last year we did not have one. And then, checks, when we order checks, it goes under there. And those are really the two majors. So the annual town report is under 3,000 or 3220. Publication, there's nothing.
So why do we have $35?
Oh, I don't know, I could, year to date, because we,
The subscriptions.
Board of Adjustment and Appeal has ordered, a manual. And so that I put it under there because,
Okay.
I don't know.
If you have a public notice, where does that go? Newspaper notice?
Public notices goes under,
Advertising,
yes,
okay.
Last one, we had dropped down the audit, which is 50-10 to 10,000. But you got a quote.
yeah, I finally heard back from them, so for, and what I did with this is I put the 23 budget and then the year to date, so you could see what was actually budgeted last year. With the 2022 audit, we haven't expended anything because they haven't, completed the audit, so they're not gonna charge us until we do that. We do have 18,000 budgeted. The anticipated cost for the 2022 audit is gonna be $17,250. And then that's what they're quoting us for, fiscal year, 2024 and then 2020, well, with the 2023. So
If they don't finish by the end of our fiscal year, but they finish the next week, can we still pay them out of that fiscal year?
we can do that until we kind of close the books and have all of the things, because we're still doing adjustments, and Marjorie had helped us a few months ago, and they haven't finished the fiscal year 22 budget. They haven't really started it. We could still pay out of fiscal year 22. We just, in our system, we go into the previous year and pay it out of that, so accounting is properly accounted.
So
Does that make sense?
this number is accurate for the next year.
So for fiscal year 2024, yes, we have a quote and it's 17,250. And I went to a training when we were looking for an auditor, and, you know, as you're aware, it took us almost a year, over a year and a half to find one. Big companies were dropping off little towns, and the companies that were picking up little towns were just charging them what they wanted to charge. And so I wish I could say that this number was a result of me being a new town administrator, but it's a number that they picked that they want to charge us. And I think that's the case with a lot of other companies. So that's the unfortunate part, that it did change quite a bit.
The only reason I brought that up is because I talked to her the other day and she said that she just got the quote, so I just wanted to.
I figured,
That was the
did
question.
you have anything else? Anything else on this department? Go right ahead, Bob, and then Jen.
I've got the list here, so I'll just kind of go through the ones we haven't talked about yet. So all the tech stuff is scratched off. Both talked about a couple. Item 2010 gasoline, we had raised the question why it was so much higher, and then Vika, can you find an electric car? I know we had the shot at one a while ago. Are there programs out there today with that kind of thing?
I know Justin went through the phase and came close and something fell through. Last time, so I sit in on a monthly basis with Southern Maine managers, and we have a lot of kind of different discussions about these things. And I think there might be some still available. I would have to really dig into it to find it, but I know that it was kind of grab it while you can, and now it's become a little bit more difficult. So I have not even had a chance to look into that as far as the electric vehicles go. And
Efficiency
then,
Main would also be a good,
what's that?
Efficiency Main might also be a good place to check.
Yeah, and I put that on the list with my next meeting with them to kind of, I mean, they seem, you know, you're sitting in a group of 15 other town managers in Southern Maine, so you got a quick way for resources,
Right.
so.
All right, and then the next one was item 5,000, and the question we raised last time was what does contract services cover?
Payroll, that's the payroll company that we
Oh.
use. And they, we pay them per person, so every payroll bi-weekly changes based on how many employees we have. Summer, it's gonna cost significantly cheaper because we're not paying teachers. December, it's gonna be significantly more because we're paying all the fire department. Quarterly, it ends up being, you know, more because we're paying the fire department, so it fluctuates throughout the year.
Yep. And that, just real quick, based on the number of employees, I use a payroll service company too. It sounds like it's about the same rate for employees. just real quick. The next one was,
What line was that, Bob?
contract services, 5,000.
Thank you.
1,300 bank fees. What bank fees do we pay?
So this number is a number that's consistently been in here over the years, even prior to me. I dropped it down to, I think I did, to 300 this year. And it's just money in there in case we end up, having any kind of like interest for credit card payment. I mean, for the most part, we do pretty well, but every once in a while, there's,
You know what the 8771 is? It's in there for year to date this year.
that would most likely be, interest or like a late payment for a credit card,
Okay.
so. And then if we don't have the bank fees, I would probably just put it under, miscellaneous expenses.
That's good to call it out. So we missed a payment at some point on a credit card?
So I mean, honestly, I would hope to go back to see exactly what it is, but there has been a time or two where a payment was a couple of days late, or, you know, we put it in the mailbox and there's a snowstorm and it doesn't go out, because we do on the warrant time, sometimes we would push it a little closer.
And then another question that came up, item 3250, register of deeds. Looks like it shows up also under the assessor and also here.
With the assessor, it is the monthly deed transfers. We pay per transfer, so registry of deeds sends us a CD, she goes in and then they bill us based on how many transfers. Under this, under the admin, the registry of deeds is going to be, if there's any lien notices, lien discharges, and with those numbers, they will typically accumulate towards the end of the tax season, when, you know, new taxes are due, and then we have to do liens for all previous years. So that number will probably spike a little bit as we get closer in the year.
Okay. And then the only other comment that we all had from the last meeting under admin was a series of questions and comments about COLA plus incentive plus one other thing. And just,
Yeah.
I can't remember what the third one was. We had raised sort of things in three different ways, and we were trying to figure out what our strategy was for utilizing those three or any
Yeah.
two of them or whatever. Is that right? Sound right?
Yeah,
It is, I'm not sure how the town administrator feels. I'm just wondering if we're going to okay pay raises of some percentage. I think we may want to consider just going with cost of living adjustments for this year. And if we want to look at handling it differently going forward, in other words, if this board feels that they philosophically can't continue to back just request for cost of living adjustments, they want to move towards merit based adjustment, or they want to move towards something else, which I don't know what that would be, that's fine. I'm just wondering, you know, do we really have time to do something differently before the budget season is complete? That's my point. The request from the town administrator is consider a cost of living adjustment. That's my point. I'm going to consider it. It may not be the number that she's got here. But I'm willing to consider a cost of living adjustment. If this board philosophically believes that we should be doing some sort of a different process of a merit-based program, then we should have that conversation, but I'm not sure how much effort we can put into it and finish the budget. That's the point. Go ahead, Carol.
Well, and I think it came up because in somewhere else down in the budget, there's a $10,000 charge for, I don't know, for good lack of a better word, bonus payments. And that was kind of I think that's what we were discussing. So,
That's been removed
right,
in
so,
this draft.
right, so I think that's what Bob's comment.
Yeah, that's what, based on the notes, that's where you,
yeah, that's the big discussion, then COLA rolled in.
Yeah, so I have personally no objection to COLA. I agree, we don't know what the number might be, but I think maybe when we get to that other charged. And you took it out, I think, right?
I did, unless they didn't get saved.
No, I think.
No, it's
it's
not.
taken out.
Yeah. The only thing I would ask everybody to consider is whether you're going to honor the 5% suggested rate that is in here now, or whether you're going to support that or a different number, because we need, at some point, we need to come to a consensus on one or two of those.
That,
So you can make that decision. You know, tonight, you can make it next time, but at some point, you probably should have a position so that I mean, otherwise, you're just gonna leave it in there, it's gonna be 5%. Right? So, go ahead.
So I guess to sort of get to my thinking on that, Vika, can you explain where you came up with 5% and why you're recommending that, just so we know?
So last year, excuse me, COLA was, 4% that, the budget passed. This year, what I based it is, the, national average is 8.7. And then every year, once again, Southern Maine managers, and then we have a listserv amongst all state managers. They do, prior to budget season, kind of who's recommending what COLA increase, and then they gather that information and send it out to us. And so based on that information, within the recommended increases in the state, the average was 5.9. And so it's anything from 4% to the town that Justin went to, he's recommending 12%. So it varies. And then I touched base with Long Island, they're recommending 5% to their employees. So I kind of went a little bit below what the average was amongst the managers or amongst the towns in Maine. But also trying, be relatively fair to the significant cost that has increased overall. The health insurance was raised 12% from last year to January. So I just, kind of went with the ballpark.
Go right ahead, Lon.
Couple things. One, the 8.7% number that you cited, I think is actually what the Social Security Administration has reported. That's what SSA recipients are getting.
Yep,
And
that's true too.
That was considered a catch-up because of prior years having not been recognized. Several other articles, just Googling it, are centering around 4%, 4.1% as the average for the year 2023. The only other comment I would make, whatever number we pick, I'd rather wait to pick the number until we find out where we are in the budget. I do think we need to come up with a strategy that includes a way to recognize cost of living increases. And, 5 years ago, it was minuscule, if anything, because inflation wasn't an issue. Right now, it's an issue.
And increases weren't minuscule within,
But then I think also as people progress in their jobs, we ought to have some way, whether it's a ladder structure or a pay range structure, some way of recognizing that an entry-level person gets paid less than a person who's been doing that job for 10 years. And in a particular job, once you get to 10 years, you may have learned most everything you're going to learn. So that may be where you peak out. In another job, you may not peak out for 20 years. As Mark said, we're not going to figure that out before the end of this budget season. But I think we really, from an HR standpoint, ought to figure out how do we differentiate between cost of living increases and increases that are based on responsibility and performance.
So there was, when Justin was here, he did do something similar to that. It was like a 5-year trajectory. He started out as entry level town clerk, deputy clerk, and so forth. And then he took the full-time and part-time hourly employees that are for the town, not the school, but town employees. So you're looking at public works, harbor master, town clerk, deputy clerk, bookkeeper, and gauged, where that was. And I think I probably am, I'm the one to blame for it, because when I was a town clerk, I did research and figured out that the town was, under wage compared to a lot of other similar positions in the state or locally. And so I think that's what pushed him to try to figure that out. And I think the $10,000 is where, how that kind of came about. And I think Mark and Bo, were you on the board when that came through? And, so when I went back and I looked at the formula that Justin used, it was a 4% increase every year. And that's kind of how that, and so the other reason why I stuck with the 5 is I've been looking at, you know, surrounding areas. What is it to hire a bookkeeper, or what are people advertising for public works, you know, here and there? And what I'm finding, and I think we experienced it when we looked at the bookkeeper position, what we hired our bookkeeper is what I was making as a town clerk / bookkeeper after having worked with the town for 5 years. So hiring employees is significantly more expensive right now than retaining the ones you have. And so our town employees right now, you know, one of our public works guys, what he's making in an hourly rate after being here 7 years, is making $2 an hour less than what Yarmouth is advertising for a public works worker. So I think that there's value in the town retaining the good employees that they do have, because it could be cheaper in the long run than us losing some employees and then us having to look for new employees and hire new employees. I think that, you know, that could cost the town significantly more money. At least based on the research that I've looked into, that's kind of what I found.
So just one other question before we leave wages. How many positions do we have that are annual contracts? So the town attorney position, is that an annual contract, or is that just a contractual relationship?
That's just a contractual, they bill us by hour.
Okay. The CEO is an annual contract?
So code enforcement officer and our tax assessor are 2 positions that were hired basically on a contracted basis. Our code enforcement officer is paid through payroll like a town employee, whereas our assessor is paid as a contractor, and then we submit her a 1099 at the end of the season. With the code enforcement officer, it was a negotiated position between the town administrator at the time and the selectmen, was hired at a set weekly rate to work average of 10 to 12 hours a week. And so that's how that position was set up. The rest of the employees, town clerk, bookkeeper, deputy clerk, harbor master, and public works department, they're all hourly based on full-time, part-time position.
So the tax assessor's on a contract and 1099, is that an annual contract?
Yes.
And when does it expire?
There wasn't an expiration date, she gets appointed as an assessor every year, and so it's a.
Well, contract has to have an expiration date. It's an annual contract, it's got to.
She was hired as a contracted employee at a, $1,000 a month. And that was how she was hired. And then she gets appointed as an assessor every year.
How's the insurance coverage on her work?
I'm sorry?
How does the insurance coverage work for her? You have her own insurance, or she covered under our MMA?
So because she's a town employee, a contractor, she's covered under the town if she's working for the town.
If she gets
But not health insurance.
She's
She
a
gets a 1099.
With the 1099, as far as taxes and stuff, we don't take out any taxes and we don't pay any taxes, but we send her
Then
1099.
she's not an employee,
Correct.
Not under payroll company, as on payroll reasons.
but she's not an employee if she gets a 1099, and then she would not be covered under the town insurance.
I think what Pete is talking about is liability insurance.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's all I was talking.
Yeah.
If you're referring to like benefits, health benefits and things like that, she's not.
No, I was just asking about liability insurance.
So the code officer is also appointed annually?
So
Yes.
the code enforcement officer is an employee, but his position, he's appointed as a position, just like with,
Fire chief.
clerk and deputy clerk and,
When does that happen?
after July 1st.
First meeting after.
First
town
meeting after July 1st, yeah.
That's probably when the tax assessor is as well.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so there's the difference of being employees or contractors and then being appointed into their position. There's kind of two different. So you can have a code enforcement officer who's the employee and choose to not appoint him July 1st, but then he would still be an employee, so.
Okay, thanks.
Are we on budget number question?
Yeah,
You good?
Are we still in wages?
We're still with administration.
Okay, I just wanted to throw in there that, I am a strong believer that you reward, good employees and, if it's a 5% COLA, that's great. I think that the only one that really knows how well an employee is doing is, their boss essentially, which is Vika. And I have no problem with her figuring out what each employee is doing and rewarding them for that. How we go about that, I'm not quite certain. But I think it's very important to retain good employees, and that's how you do it, by rewarding them.
And I think that was the ultimate goal of the $10,000. I think that, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think Jake Corson might have been the one who came up with the idea, and I do think that, and once again, I could be wrong, but the idea was that could help the town save on FICA and Medicare and those costs. But unfortunately, we have, town employees that are hourly paid, employees that are going through the payroll system, we can't give them $1,000 bonus and write it out of a warrant. That still has to go in. That first year, that $10,000 wasn't accounted with FICA and Medicare costs. But, last year and this
So
year.
that's, yeah.
Carol?
Yeah, and I don't want to talk too much on this, but I don't disagree with Jen that, there should be a mechanism to reward either, loyalty, longevity, performance. I'd rather do it in the actual pay, adjust their pay rate, which we did do that a couple times on the school side because things weren't on whack. The problem with these one-time lump sum payments, it's different percentages of people's salaries depending on what their job is, and it isn't always fair. And so all I would like is a system that, if we're gonna do a reward-based adjustment, it needs to be fair.
But this proposal is 5% across the board.
So with
Right.
this proposal, the
For every
5% is, so it's a town clerk, bookkeeper, deputy clerk.
Yeah,
All of the full-time and part-time employees that that qualify for benefits. So anybody that works over
Yeah,
23 hours.
and that's basically my philosophical problem with cost of living adjustments across the board. Is if we're not seeing and getting the results of reviews from our supervisor of the employees that are working underneath her and for our taxpayers, then how do we know that everyone, quite frankly, is deserving? That's all. That's my philosophical problem.
yeah, so how do you reward them?
I think the supervisor obviously said for each employee, has some sort of conversation. If you want to call it a review, you can call it a review. Usually it's just a souped up conversation from each direction, and it needs to be that. And then the supervisor, decides if there's a pot of money available. In this case, I think the proposal is 5% across the
So
board.
with the 5% it's the cost of living adjustment. And
Yeah.
I have not seen a municipality in the state of Maine that's not doing some form of cost of living, which that's separate from
Yeah.
rewarding our employees.
And again, my problem with that is how do we know that the performance is there? Because
So for me, just like she just stated, the cost of living adjustment to me is basically a cost adjustment
It's not.
for
based
all
on
the costs that
performance.
are, they're occurring, electricity rising and all that. I know I'd like to get it cost of living, but it is what it is. Bonuses should be separate, and that should be under, depending on what kind of review they get, at the end of the year. And that should be handed out by the TA, is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
As far as a cost of living adjustment, 5%. That's the average. I would go with the average.
It's below the average.
Well,
It is,
yeah, below the average, sorry, but, so right now, let's do that before we get too far. Right now, we know some of our employees are paid, less than,
Just so you're aware, it's about a $20,000 hit to our budget, plus it's gonna increase FICA, it's gonna increase overtime, and it could increase workman's comp payments, because workman's comp is 75 to 80% of your gross wages, so just so you know.
So the other way I look at it is 5% is less than paying a new person to come in at X amount more than what we're paying now. So that's the way I
Do you
look at
have more questions about budget?
That was it.
No?
That was it.
Okay. Carol,
All right,
are
now,
we good to move on from administration?
Um,
Do you have anything else, Vika?
No, I don't think so. I think under administration, that's good.
Okay. Page 3, anybody have anything for assessor department 1400? Nothing on your notes, Bob?
We covered that
Um,
one.
There
The only thing was registry of deeds.
Yeah, there was a question
All right.
about the registry of deeds where I answered. The assessing maps, I made a mistake. I didn't take that out. I did take it out for this time.
Okay.
I did ask Judy and, to see, how often do towns similar in our size do the changes? Bigger towns do it every year, some towns do it every couple of years. I think we might be okay to do it every other year, hopefully that works. But that's up to you guys to decide.
Go ahead, Jen.
So just to clarify, so when you, when the assessing maps was in there for, the 2024, and then you take it out, because you put it in there, that's where the, the percentage change comes from?
Yes,
So it's kind of just, that's not really what happened, or?
so it's showing that between last year's budget and this year's budget, it's a negative 100%. So we're taking away 100% of that cost from last year to this year.
Yep.
And then with the contracted services, so Jackie, she's going on 6 years. She didn't ask for anything. I know it briefly came up as a conversation last year, and that was more of, so she's good, she's working, we pay her minimal for the services that she does, and I think it wouldn't be a terrible thing to show that appreciation by bumping it up by a couple $100 so that we don't lose her.
Do you have something, Carol?
well, yeah, so on the assessor, I just want to be clear, 3390 is the GIS updates of the town assessment maps.
Correct.
So is that Judy Colby George's
Yes.
services? So, unless I'm wrong, I think we are very far behind on updating. We haven't updated it for multiple years, so I would be inclined to keep the 1800 in there because until we're caught up, am I wrong, Paul? But I thought we
I have just now looking at an email between Vika, Judy and I that relates to a piece of land that we've all spent weeks working on that isn't even owned by the person in question, according to our tax maps. According to our tax files, according to Judy. So Vika, you may not have had a chance to follow up on that yet, but I'm talking about,
I have
Yeah.
not.
we'll go into it.
I saw your email, but I haven't seen anything that she might have responded
So
to.
the bottom line is, I think I would keep the 1800 until we're sure we're solid, and then we could switch to a every other year schedule or every 3-year schedule, but I have a feeling we have a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And that, that's, I didn't realize, so that is really a contracted service to Judy Colby George or whatever. And then I don't have a problem with paying on 5,000. I'm fine giving her an increase, but it's really not a cost of living increase. We're giving her.
No,
equivalent
I
pay
just said, no, it's
Right.
not. No.
Okay, so I
And
just
I
want to
mean,
be sure I
you
understood.
can decide whatever number you want to put in there. I just put that note in there so you'd notice it. And-
Yeah, so I'm fine with that. I guess I would just suggest we put back in some amount for map, it's really map corrections or whatever.
So are you proposing 1,800 on line 3390?
Yeah, which is what we had in originally, and then we took it out, right?
And Bob, are you in agreement with that?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
You brought that.
Okay.
Our opinion doesn't matter.
Got it.
It is a cost per map and then cost per printing. So I mean,
Yeah. Anything else on assessor from anyone? Page 4, election and register, board of registrar. There was no change here, no comment on this. Page 5, planning. I don't think we,
The only thing we changed was line item 5090 to 5,000, and then we had asked if,
we lowered it by 650.
yeah, if the planning board had anything to say about it.
I did not, so I had emailed the chair, a while back asking if there were any anticipated changes or how they felt. And he asked general questions about it, and he said that he was, fine with how it was. I did not have a chance to follow up about the $650 decrease.
So what, are we leaving it at proposed 5525 for now?
For now.
And I did add, the training in there, just because with COVID and Zoom, there are more and more Zoom trainings being available, and with, board members and lots of things happening, I think that it's wise to have it for.
So just mark, so I'm clear, 5,000, right? Are we leaving it at?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
thought he said 5520.
Yeah, which is the total cost, 55.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I just want the 2024 initial.
Yeah.
Are we leaving it at 5,525 for now?
For the whole department.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Nothing else on that one?
Nope.
Page 6, Department 1800, Board of Adjustment and Appeals, obviously the change was, this year was to add $3,000, the total, plus another 150, I guess, for publication. So the total went from 0 to 3,150. Any comments from anyone on this? Or questions?
I just would still prefer to have legal all in one budget, but it's fine, whatever.
And
It's
so
not
it
the amount.
is, that was one of the things in the notes, it is an option, and you can do that. You can
Right.
put everything, because the communications and the policy is that boards would come to you for approval to use the funds. And I mean, with all of the things that are happening right now, if, for instance, $5,600 from the planning board was under the legal services,
Yeah.
then we would have that $5,600 without question. And so it's, right now, the way the budget looks, you're anticipating $23,000 for legal fees between those three boards, versus last year it was $16,500. So
Right.
it is an option.
It's my preference to have it in one lump sum for the flexibility. And I feel as though if the boards need help, they come to the select board decides ultimately. It isn't like the planning board can go out and hire their own attorney. It has to come through the town.
So could I ask, in our opinion, or your scenario, would the process be that the planning board or the Board of Adjustment Appeals or whoever, would they make a request to the town administrator and then it would be brought to us for consideration? Would that be the process?
Regardless of which bucket the money is in, you have to follow that same process.
Right.
However, Carol and I don't agree on this. I would rather see it be in separate buckets, just so we don't easily spend it on this board stuff at the expense of those boards meeting.
That's the job.
Jen?
And I was kind of in agreement with Carol in that it gives you more flexibility if it's in one bucket versus, if Board of Adjustment and Appeals only has 3,000. And they spend the 3,000, but there's still quite a big lump sum in, the Board Select bucket, then I just think it makes more sense to have it all in one place.
They could still spend it. we could still let them spend from the administrative.
From the big bucket.
I can go either way,
Yeah.
myself, I can go either way.
Bookkeeping purposes, I think it could be easier to have it in from one, but that's just, from booking perspective, that's.
I guess my inclination would be to have it all in one, in legal. And then not to keep it away from the planning board or make it difficult for the board of adjustment appeals to access or to control everything. I feel like the wizards of the week, but I think it probably makes more sense for just overall management and transparency. I don't know why I think that.
Yeah, I strongly disagree. I go back to when I was chair of the planning board. Planning board took issue with decisions the town was making, wanted to use a different attorney. Select board did not want the planning board to use a different attorney.
Okay,
The town attorney at the time was part of the problem that the planning board took issue with. That's why I'm so strongly in favor of keeping them separate, just to keep that conversation open.
well, I sincerely hope I wasn't part of that problem. I don't believe I was.
I-
I don't remember it.
But isn't that different from using the money? That was,
It is different than using the money, it still needs approval, just by having it in separate buckets, it just creates, if anything, the conversation about different people holding each other accountable.
So what's the will of this board tonight? And Vika, speak up if you have anything to say about this. What's the will of this board tonight with moving forward with this budget? You wanna, for now, leave these in the separate departments and revisit this conversation at some point, or just let it flow for now?
Personally, I'm fine moving the legal amounts into a consolidated legal budget of 23,000. Is that what you said? That's what I would prefer to do. I understand not everybody wants to do that.
That's where I am too. Well,
I think we're late in the game to start changing the way stuff has been done. So unless we have some kind of, this is how we're gonna do this. A plan on exactly how we're gonna take the money out and all that. I don't think it's a good time to start changing how we do stuff.
okay, Bob, I think we know how you feel. Jen?
I'm still in agreement with it, it should all be in one big bucket. And it's a golden bucket.
Well, I think as of tonight, it sounds like we might be moving all of this over into the legal, which is now proposed at, I think, 13,000, so that will increase.
So,
Just one more point, is we've already had our conversations with the department budget people. We've already had budget conversations with the departments, with the different committees.
Mhm.
So when we had that conversation, we didn't tell them we were considering taking their legal budget away from them. Now we're deciding to take their legal budget away from them.
Good point. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it that way. I don't think we're taking their legal budget away from them. I think we're moving our legal expenses into a single line item and they still have access to it. I mean, I don't think, that's my opinion. I would say on the planning board, I think that 5,000 is comprised of 3,000 in legal and maybe 2,000 in contracted services. At least,
Consulting or something.
yeah, it used to be for GIS. So if you go back to historically, we didn't put 5,000 in the legal budget, I don't think.
We put 5,000 into the budget line called consulting and legal.
Right, and so sometimes that was used for GIS services, so. I would say that I did check, on most communities that I checked have legal as a single budget. And they have multiple bond attorneys, land use attorneys, town, other types of legal attorneys. So they all come out of the same line item, but there might be 7 attorneys involved.
Jen, did you have something to say?
I was just gonna say that it's not taking away from each department.
Okay. So do we want, go ahead.
Just a quick question, procedural. If we're removing like legal services out of, board of appeals and planning board, does that have to go to town meeting, or are we just?
No, the
zeroing
town
out
meeting
that?
gets voted as a full department, so planning board, 20,000.
Doesn't matter what these are.
No, these subcategories, you can add or delete as many as you want. It's that overall base number that gets going on.
So can I do a thing to move this stuff along? Yeah. All right, so I move that we change,
Just a workshop, I'm sorry.
oh, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, brave heart.
You can say what you
yeah.
want to happen, and you make it.
I want to increase line item 1900 legal services, 5540, which is currently 15,000 to,
If you add what you have now, it's 23 between all three of them.
I wanted to 25,000.
I do have one quick question about that. In planning, in that 5090 consulting or legal services, does that mean that's going from 5,000 to 0?
If that's what you're
Is
recommending.
that what you're recommending?
Yes.
Okay.
Remove, sorry, recommend to remove, just to move this stuff along, so remove that one, remove that $5,000 from there,
Yeah.
remove the $3,000 from legal services and the BOA, and change the 5540 general admin to $25,000.
The only reason I asked that question, I'm sorry to continue to muddy the water, is if that board wants to engage some consulting services now, does that mean they have to come back to this board for that money too?
They can't, because we're moving it into a fund called legal. It's not a fund called legal and
Yeah.
consulting. It's
But that's the
not-
purpose of my question.
Yep.
Should we leave something in that for consulting? That's the purpose of my question. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, and that's the point I was trying to make, is that we should leave 3,000 or something. I would suggest we leave 3,000 in the consulting legal services category.
Yeah,
Or
I'm
consulting, I
I'm
mean,
sorry to backtrack.
I would call that contracted services.
But what we're talking about is page 5, 5090. Instead of taking $5,000 and making it 0, I think we're talking about 3,000.
That's my recommendation, we leave
That's mine,
3,000 contracted services.
So why don't we just cross out legal services and do consulting?
Yeah.
Can you do that?
So under planning,
I'm fine with that.
you want to change, so yeah, so department 1700 planning is department 1700 planning, but 5090, you could change that to whatever you want. So you want to change
that
it to
consulting.
consulting?
We're talking about $3,000.
Do you think 3,000 is adequate? You've been on the board.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, yep.
3,000.
And then, should we do the same for the BOA?
I don't-
Will it be a Carol?
No.
Because I don't think BOA is really gonna need consulting the way the planning board does.
Right.
I think BOA is different, so I think BOA, the direction we're headed, BOA, planning and town select board, all legal work comes out of the one budget pool, all gets administered by the select board. And we just need to remind ourselves frequently that as we're spending stuff for the select board, we need to make sure we're in touch with BOA and planning board. What do you guys see on the horizon? Make sure we've got money left.
Yeah.
I'll go with it.
And I'm sorry we're bogged down, but can I just for clarification, go to page 6?
Yeah.
Board of Adjustment and Appeal. What are you proposing to leave in that department, $150?
I would recommend that you eliminate that department, because then the town vote is gonna be Department Board of Adjustment Appeals, $150. I would rather just, in that case, if legal is gonna be all in the legal, publications, we just do it under
Under
admin.
administration.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because we're voting as a department, and then that's another department that we can't go over 10% if we have to, and it seems silly.
So your proposal is to not have Department 1800?
Well, I just created it this budget season, so it's never been in a town meeting vote before, so.
Okay, thank you. And now you can
So we had
tell us what your proposed number is for page 7, Department 1900. Sorry.
So you took the 23 something that Dika calculated, you added to it to come to 25. We just took 3 out of that, so it would be 22.
Right.
Or we took 2 out of that, so it would be 23 actually.
Oh, yeah, you're right, 20.
We took 2 out.
Yeah.
So it would be, Bo's increase, number would be 23.
Yeah, either 23, 22, somewhere around there. I just want to make sure that the town, I was coming to this meeting proposing 20 for that line item without doing the other changes. Basically because all the legal,
So what's the proposed number?
so,
23,000?
let's do 23.
Okay.
Sorry about that, folks.
And then I asked that we all remember that once we get past all these legal battles, we gotta pull that number back down.
We almost back on track. We're good with legal.
Yep.
Page 8, Department 2100, law enforcement. I can't remember any.
Line item 1010, wages part-time, parking attendant. We had put in for a 3,000 stipend. The number was not changed from the.
Our consensus last
But
time,
the consensus was equals no. so
Right.
that's why I didn't change
Okay,
it.
well,
There
I
wasn't
just-
a vote on it.
I didn't have my, I
So
didn't write the whole thing.
did that not change? Yeah, that's probably right then. Any other discussion on law enforcement? From anyone?
You guys asked for a copy of the Cumberland County Sheriff's contract, which I just got that this afternoon. And of course, the number isn't adjusted since that. But I'll get that to you.
So are you saying the wages will be higher than what's in here? Okay, but you'll update that?
Yes, I will. It'll be updated for Saturday. I had emailed Cumberland County asking for it because we usually have it by this time of the year. And there was some delay in the numbers and then he sent it to me this afternoon, but I didn't.
So
have it.
not the wages, the contract.
The
services.
contract,
Oh, contract services, sorry.
So line item 5,000
5,000,
not
yeah.
accurate here?
Correct.
Okay,
It's increased by $3,000.
okay.
Okay.
Besides that, any other?
yeah,
questions?
item 3 on my notes said suggest change to 3K, but I neglected to say what line that was on. Summer only, 4 months. Does this have to do with the parking thing?
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
10, okay.
Yeah,
We never got to a conclusion, I don't think.
We did not get it.
no,
I think we, something about coastal waters.
Well, yes, I think we're waiting for Vika to get coastal waters and us together for a workshop, is that right?
Yeah. We're working on dates right now.
Vika,
Trying to
one
make more
procedural
dates.
thing, when you give us the next draft of the budget, can you highlight in yellow the things that have changed since the previous one? To make it much easier to keep
I
track.
can go through and hand highlight it and then scan them into you that way. That would
This is
work.
not an Excel spreadsheet, this is coming out of Trio, right?
Yes.
There's no way to bold it or anything other than doing it manually?
I can probably pull it out as an Excel spreadsheet, but then I would have to go through and still manually highlight it.
Yeah,
No, these expensive systems, they're limited to what you can do.
I don't have any budget discussion, but, and I'll just say one more time, with me, I think maybe a little bit bigger discussion at some point with us and the community about how the stone wharf is managed, might fit in with parking and maybe
agreed.
a marine type
I agree.
blended. Thank you.
Yep.
Nothing else on that one?
Nope.
Page 9, Department 2200 Fire and Rescue. I think we took, I haven't,
Item 2000, we said take the electricity to 3K, which
Yeah.
Mika has done. We were talking about heat pumps.
2,200,
yeah, that.
heat was down to 55.
Yeah, most of these, we got answers from Ralph and that, from
They were
Steve, so.
here. The only-
Yeah, they were very helpful, by the way. Go ahead.
And just for Vika's benefit, because it's not in Bob's notes, at that meeting, you had a comment in your notes about them supposedly putting together job descriptions for the positions.
Yes, I listened to that and
And
they're
so
supposed to
they
have it
had
by March
committed, to-
1st.
right, they committed to
Yes.
March 1st, so you can, I thought when they were asking for money was a good time to get them to commit.
Well, and the hope was that that information would be provided to us before the discussion of this budget season.
Well-
And then I met with them and gave them a week to try to get that information to me. They didn't, and then followed up with 2 emails, and I still didn't get that, so.
So I'm fine to hold them hostage on their budget approval until they send it.
All right.
And I'm not suggesting that we should have access or any control at all over how they intend to use their money that they have. I'm gonna call it their nonprofit investment fund now. I don't know what they're calling it now. They used to call it kitty a long time ago. And I know that there's been a significant contribution to that. But I do think that we and the public should probably see some sort of a report from them that now that they are a 501c, I think they are, aren't they?
Yep.
Nonprofit, about
Yep.
what their status is, because that's what we're asking of every other entity, aren't we? Or is that not?
Well, I guess
Am I
only the
looking at it wrong?
entities that are asking us for money,
Money.
so it is a
They're
little,
still a department.
it's a little different,
little
but
different.
I think it's a reasonable request.
I mean, just a general
Right,
accounting, we have this amount of money, we're thinking we might
Yeah.
use some of it for this benefit.
I think that's, since we're funding them as a department and they have access to a nonprofit fund, it's reasonable.
And if I'm not looking at that correctly, I would like to be enlightened. You know, I don't want to stir anything up.
I mean, school has a really tiny fund, it's nothing like that.
Any more questions or comments on, oh, go ahead.
And then just going back to what, our last meeting that we talked about, taking, $9,000 from the ARPA funds to pay for the, tarp shed. I'm curious to know what the kitty is being, what did they use that for? And why wouldn't it come out of that?
Well, that's kind of what I just suggested, not that specifically,
That
but you,
specific.
you kind of tried to ask that question, and I thought you handled it very well, and they skated around it excellent. And, no, we don't know of any other way to get that money, so that's all. It's just
It's
just
fair.
It's a different relationship now. I didn't realize departments were becoming 501c3 nonprofits, while also a department, and that surprised me when that happened.
I guess I'm not sure it is the department, I'm not sure how that works.
I think if you look at the actual 501c3, it's not the actual department. It's something like a beneficial organization or something
Oh,
like that.
friends of the fire
Something
department.
like that. And you know why it happened, right?
Yep, okay.
And the library has something.
Are we good with fire rescue? Page 10, Department 2400, code enforcement. I wasn't aware of any changes.
Well, I did say at the last meeting that I thought we should increase, well, the question was in Bob's notes here. Ask Vika for how many hours the code enforcement officer is budgeted for.
So I looked in the personnel folder and there was a letter with a job offer and it's 10 to 12 hours a week.
And what, because Bob was, I think he came up with a number that you didn't think was reasonable. So that's at some hourly rate?
It's, what it was a weekly, it's $540 per week.
But if they only work 4 hours, do they still get $540? Okay,
So the contract was $540 per week, and there was a specific, like winter months, it was, 10 hours average, summer months, like 7 months out of the year, it was 12 hours average that was expected to be worked.
I think I have some questions that are probably better for another discussion, but for the budget itself, looking at a number, the amount of construction and the apparently work going on Hope Island, I think we may want to increase. I would recommend we double this budget. Or add at least another 20,000 to this budget.
Go ahead, Bob.
Looking at that hourly rate, I would disagree. I think if we change the nature of the remuneration, 54 bucks an hour sounds like a lot to me for code enforcement.
Yeah, I'm also not in favor of increasing it if it's going to go towards wages.
Yeah.
Or hours.
Correct.
I have a little bit of a different perspective.
I guess I said that the wrong way. So yeah, you're right. I think we need a code officer here on an hourly rate more often.
Yeah.
Not sure what the actual number will be.
Yeah, and I'm personally okay with what's here for this budget year. I think if we need to have another bigger discussion with, code officer, ourselves, Long Island, whatever it is, I think that's separate from this tonight.
Yes, I agree. When do we finalize the budget?
I'm not trying to brush you off.
No.
Typically May
May.
first, May
Yeah.
15 by the
beginning-
latest.
Usually end of April, beginning of May, and then it goes to the lawyer for revision and,
Yeah,
um,
We have it on our,
but I would like to at some point, I think I said this to you last time, Vika, or recently. I would like to hear that there's a scheduled visit to Hope Island with the tax assessor and the code officer.
There is,
and
I'll
how
be sharing
they're
that
going to
with
get
you.
there, whether it's
next
water.
selectmen's meeting, I'll give you the information. We have the date and time and.
Not that I'm paranoid about Hope Island, but, knowing that our code officer and assessors keeping an eye on places.
Nope,
you
it's
know,
happening in March.
access. Thank you.
We had also requested, I requested that we know the date so that hopefully one or two of the
Yes.
select board members should go.
Yep, no, we set it up and I was gonna share it with you at the next selectmen's meeting.
Why do we have to wait until the next selectmen's meeting?
Because we just finalized it yesterday when the tax assessor was here, so I haven't had any.
Why can't you send an email out tomorrow saying what the date is? That's not a vote, that's not a decision.
I mean, I could.
Yeah.
They have-
That would be helpful for people's schedules.
Are we good with code enforcement budgetarily?
For now, yep.
For now.
Okay, sounds good. Page 11, Department 2500, Harbor Shellfish. Last time, the wages part-time was taken from 26,647 down to I think, proposed stipend type model, unless I'm incorrect with that statement, to 6,000. Any other discussion on that or any other line item from anyone on Harbor Shellfish? Go ahead.
Well, only that I felt that prior to finalizing this number, we need to meet with Coastal Waters to discuss the position. And prior to that, we need a copy of the job description for the harbor master and shellfish for from town administrator.
Could I just, and I agree with that. Vig, what do you think, in your opinion, is the prospect of being able to get the members of the Coastal Waters Commission and any interested members from Shellfish to come and talk to us? Because I think also there's probably some discussion that's gonna go over into the ordinance or the importance or not of the ordinances.
I've talked to Justin quite a few times and, right now, we're trying to hope that he can corral enough members to possibly schedule something the week of March 6th,
Okay,
which we have a budget workshop, which is supposed to be the third draft of the budget on the 8th. And so at this point, I'm beginning to get a little worried as far as how long it's taken us to get that, because it is a huge number, and I think the job description would need to be adjusted and a lot of work around it, and I hope that we can get enough of those numbers to have an input so we can move forward.
okay. I'm sorry, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm just hesitant on changing that number until there's a plan. We don't have a plan. We're hoping that we'll put a stipend in there. And what happens if our current harbor master doesn't want the job? So now the town has no harbor master.
That is my biggest fear. come forward.
Every year that I've sat on this board, we've had multiple complaints about, boat parking, boats and all that good stuff. About the Stone Pier and Cousins Island, needing a harbor master presence here and there on both sides of the island. And now we're looking to bring down the stipend. To a lesser thing. So
Yeah.
I just want to share my concerns on that. And then, as far as the coastal waters, on Wednesday, the 8th, we added, possible capital expenditure, like the third view on that. So either we do a workshop on that day, but that would add on to that meeting considerably. So I'm just afraid that if we do that, we're gonna have, I don't know how long the talks with coastal waters would be. That would be,
It may be longer than you think,
yeah.
and capital is very important.
So anyway, I was gonna bring up on our next meeting so that we can come in together and come up with a date that we would want to do the workshop with them.
Yeah.
Also with Justin and stuff, and try to get all together, try to get a date that we can do
Yeah, we may need to make an adjustment for that plan, you're right.
Yeah, so we'll talk more on the first.
And that's it, Bo's reasoning, I was also not in favor of changing the wage number for this position, right now, mostly because we don't have a really good plan of what we're gonna do, with this position or this department. And I have some other concerns that are only appropriate in executive session. Anyway, does anybody have any comments on this division, harbor shelter?
I guess I feel like meeting with coastal waters should be a priority, because we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like we just keep going around and around. So personally, I kind of, I think we need to decide for this 2024 budget where we're at.
Yeah.
And sometime between now and then, we better meet with them.
Okay. We will get it scheduled and make it happen.
We'll talk about it on the first, and then we'll get the details from Justin and fine tune that.
If I can, go to page 12, Department 2600.
I'm sorry, one other question that came up in our last meeting. Vika, have you gotten all the way through these notes yet, or are you still working through them?
I've gotten through most of them, yeah. So
So
you
that-
had, there was a mooring system question.
Yes, and the question was, how do we make the mooring fees? Do we need to raise the mooring fees in order to have the mooring fees cover the cost of an appropriate online registry?
Oh, yeah, right.
So currently, we collect on average about $10,000 a year in mooring fees. And that has been increased in revenue since this new system has gone into place, because it's all electronic. And this system actually, I mean, we've taken all responsibility from town office staff, so we haven't touched it. Jannar has done all of it, so it's working in our benefit. I think that it would be wise for the town, and that would be something for coastal waters to make recommendation. We collect $25 a mooring right now towns around us, Yarmouth, significantly more. Even if we bump it up to $50, we're then doubling our revenue. And I think, you know, that's how we can really increase as far as how much more revenue we can collect. But right now, this cost is based per mooring that, you know, per mooring that we have in the Shebig Water. So that's how that cost is generated. And it's an annual contract that he sends out to determine that cost.
But the commercial fishermen always got a cheaper rate anyway, did they?
It's, everybody across the board is $25 now.
Right.
A couple of years ago, it was, commercial, resident, non-resident.
Right,
It's
that's what I meant.
$25 resident. Across anybody, and then it's $125 for a non-resident, and I think we have like maybe 5 people who are considered non-resident.
So if I remember correctly, I thought last year we had to pay whatever X amount, and then because of, you know, the mooring website, you had to pay $5 to do whatever, I can't remember.
So
So to do the, whatever online website they needed to do, there was a $5 charge for whatever.
So in here, the technology online mooring website, the annual fee, the $1,085, that's the cost for us to have that and to do what we need to do to have that mooring system for the fiscal year.
So let's
That's
just
that
change,
number.
let's just change our fee structure and charge the $5 per more.
$5 extra, you're talking about?
$5 extra on our mooring.
Well,
That way.
I would
we eliminate
suggest
that.
that'd be part of the conversation.
Conversation.
That would be, that would be what conversations with coastal waters. Do you want to change in general what people pay for mooring?
I think we also need to take another look at the non-resident. The definition of resident is people who vote here. I think we have at least a bunch more people than 5 who don't vote here who have more.
It's based on taxpayer, if you're a taxpayer.
Our definition of resident within ordinance is very specific. So if we have a different definition of resident relative to mooring, I'd like to see where that's called out in ordinance. Somebody obviously made a decision that if you pay taxes here, in this case, you're a resident. I don't know how that decision got made, but I think we need to revisit that. Resident, non-resident is pretty clear.
Yeah. Those type of conversations are good ones to have
Right.
with that committee. Does anybody have any more comments about 2500 Harbor Master?
So,
Thank you. Page 12, Department 2600 Animal Control. I don't think we changed anything there. Yes, we did.
There were questions raised, but on here, I
We took that
wasn't
miscellaneous.
sure, so I
think we took 3160 from $500 down to 100. Is that right, Bob?
Yes.
which, yeah, that got changed.
And then we had talked about training 5240.
was there a plan for training?
For plan.
With the training, Public Works, Harbor Master, Animal Control, all of them have annual trainings that they're supposed to be attending. COVID put a damper on that, and so the last couple of years, it's been really scarce in getting that back into it. Animal Control is somebody that's supposed to do annual training to be considered in animal control, through the state, so I wouldn't take that out because it is something that you should be doing, and I think this year it should be available to be done. I know our harbor master just signed up for a training that for the first time since prior to COVID, that the full training is back in action, so I wouldn't take that out.
Any issue in your opinion, Vika, by lowering 3160 by $400 miscellaneous? Not really.
It's one of those things where, you don't know. I know a couple of years ago, I think we ended up having to buy like a big cage that was an unexpected expense, and that's where that came from, but
Yeah,
it's one of those departments where you really don't know. I don't think there's an issue with it taking it out.
Anybody else got a comment or question? Go ahead,
How many hours do you figure for a year, do you know?
I emailed our animal control officer and asked for a report. Really, the most hours come in during the summertime because we do get quite a few calls, random dogs running around. We do get a number of calls with seals and birds and things like that. But I really couldn't even give you an average for as far as how many hours it's in. It is a quarterly stipend, that's how we pay that out.
Any more comments or questions on this division? Okay. Next page is page 13, Public Services, Department 3100. We had some changes proposed. One that I think one that I had was line item 3040. I suggested $18,000 down from 20,000 proposed. The only reason I suggested that, and I think I ran this by Vika, one of my stray emails maybe, was that if you average 20,000 and 11,000, the average is less than 18,000. So I thought that was a safe number.
I had it at 17.
Yeah,
I had
you said
17.
17, yeah.
You have 17?
Yeah.
Fine with me.
Sorry, what number you're looking at?
30,
30, 40.
So it's item 13 on my list, it said change it to 17,000.
All right. Anybody else? I think we had, I had a question on one of my favorite topics.
Oh, you didn't write yes, with all the other ones, you would write yes or consensus. That's-
Oops, sorry.
These are fired as
I
well.
know.
Well, this and then listening to the meeting, it was.
I had a question on 4,600 cold patch.
Yeah,
You've lowered it from 5,000 to 2,500. I think that's appropriate. But I'm wondering if that's quite enough. How much did that little pile of cold patch cost us that's sitting outside in the yard down there?
the one that he just got. I'd have to take a look. I'm not sure. It wasn't that much. I was surprised by how
Oh, money wise?
cheap it.
I
Yeah.
hope not, because it's a measly amount of cold patch. And the reason I bring that up is I'm looking at that hill again down by Kansas Cove Wharf, and you know, it's sinking again, so we're gonna have to do
Yeah, it's
something with
terrible.
it, and that's the product,
Yeah,
isn't it?
That last rainstorm. Wow.
So I'm just asking if 2,500 might not be enough, we might wanna go to 3,000 or 3,500.
Which line are you on, Mark?
Line
4,600.
item 4,600 on page
Yep.
13, cold patch.
When I met with Public Works, it was their recommendation to bring that number down because they felt like the majority of the roads being fairly new, that they didn't feel like they would need
Yeah.
that, but
And I'm fine with 2,500. Here's my other question, quickly, I'll be quick. I wonder if they can use any of that cold mix for anything. But that huge pile of cold mix. Yeah, starting to set up. We're gonna have to use it for something. I know it's not the right product, but they could probably compact that in, crunch, right?
Yeah, I would think so. You can also ask Allstate too, to see if they have any recommendations on that. Yeah.
or give us
They
a
recommend
discount
hot
for the
dog.
next one.
So I'm good leaving it at 2,500, sorry.
I gotta drive, as I said, I gotta drive. I've got a few other things here.
Go ahead.
4640, winter road material, our consensus was to bring it down to 8K. It's still sitting at 12,500.
Yeah, we had asked that she talked to Chuck about it, to see where his thoughts on it, to review it.
So I wrote down that our consensus was 8K, but Vika, are there other insights?
Yeah.
So
Did you
what
guys say-
what is the story on that, I guess?
No, I have not had the chance to ask them.
We know he replenishes at the end of the year, like toward the end of the budget, he
Yeah.
brings it all in. But in 2022, the total amount was $6,000. 2021, the actual amount was $6,700. Budget for 2023 was 12,500. if we've already brought in 2,500, how much more are we gonna bring in? Do we really need to budget 12,500 is the question.
And we had 8,000.
We had said to move it to 8,000.
I think the
The huge pile coming up outside, right?
4640 winter road materials, that's the one.
Correct,
yeah. Which I assume is a salt and sand.
I say leave it at 8 unless we hear them.
Well, it has to be changed to 8,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right.
Change it, yeah, so there's that one. And then, 5240 training was in there at 500. We said remove it unless there's a plan. Kika?
And they, once again, COVID trainings are back coming up and they're actually getting ready to sign up to do a training in the spring. So I would encourage to do as much training as possible and keep that money in.
I'm okay with leaving it in there.
Yeah.
There's a plan, man.
And I'd like to make a comment about 4630, top of that page on 14, road material. I don't mind budgeting for road materials and buying road materials and even stockpiling some road materials, but we've got quite a bit of road material piled up. So my preference myself would be to have a plan for some of those. The reclaim and the gravel are gonna be mixed and put onto Littlefield Road. I'm just using an example of a dirt road. So my only point is, I would like to hear a plan for some of these materials, not just pile them up and maybe use them, maybe not. Okay?
I have talked to Public Works about it, and so, last year, they wanted to do a lot of work to a lot of the gravel roads.
Yeah.
And there's also a number of culverts that need to be replaced, so they have things that they need to get done with it.
Okay.
They just haven't had a chance to.
And I'm also looking forward to the possible new tractor machine purchase for capital in this department, which may have some benefit for maintaining some of these dirt roads as
And I
well as mowing.
I finally got a quote on that too.
Okay. Go ahead, Jen.
4,000, we had talked about, we dropped it to 2,000. But we wondered, that's building maintenance.
Okay.
And we wondered if there was a plan for, do they have stuff that they're replacing within the building itself? Is that?
Yeah, 'cause 1 year was
Because
38, right?
Well,
Those garage doors.
that one big year was
Doors.
door replacements and the door openers and stuff and dues.
So we didn't want to drop it if there was some plan to replace another door or something like that.
I'll double check with him. We had, I mean, when we went through and talked about the budget, what you guys got last time was his comments, so with something separate like this, I'd have to double check.
One thing that, the 80/40, the last item, operating and maintenance,
Yeah.
I don't think that belongs in this.
What is that?
Yeah, what is?
Operation and maintenance, it's a line that had been there and it hasn't been budgeted for the last couple of years. So at some point in 21, they, I think what had happened, looking at things historically, is it got split and other accounts may have been created as far as building maintenance and equipment maintenance and things like that, but there hasn't been anything in there. But it could be.
Any other comments or questions on public services? Thank you. Page 15, Department 3200 is solid waste. Did we change anything?
Yeah, 5130, we said take it to 0 because we only do that every other year.
Right.
So the one thing with that is, with the hazardous waste, I'm hesitant about taking it all out to 0 because we pay, even though we don't do hazardous waste weekend, there are still some things that we send that they consider hazardous waste. And so we're going through right now and analyzing and going through every single invoice from last year to figure out what was charged for what and how much. I think we're getting pretty close. Tim's been helping me with that, so I'm nervous about taking that out entirely without knowing the details of that.
Now that she said that, because it doesn't, the refrigerant, you have a guy come over and empty all the.
Yeah, so with the
that-
fridges and microwaves and, TVs, things
special
like
waste is in
that,
that?
there's, what's that?
Special waste is in that?
It's, yeah, that's some of that, and so until I have those numbers, I'm hesitant about taking that out entirely.
You all set?
Just had another question on this. The hazardous waste, I know historically that the town has been collecting, like paint, all, whatever hazardous waste that they get. Are they authorized to do that? Not authorized, but are they,
Licensed?
whatever, we have to hire a special crew from town to come pick it up. And I know that's transporting,
Did you have?
I don't know.
Yeah, so that's a question I asked Chuck. I don't think he understood my question. And it relates to the volume and sort of the hazardous nature. And one thing that he said that was a little concerning to me is that, latex paint that he's been taking, or paint, and latex paint, we shouldn't be paying to dispose of that as hazardous waste. So I have that same kind of concern that the town maybe shouldn't be, I think it's fine for the town to manage its own materials, but taking other things from the public, I don't have a concern, but also, I think what we need here is an itemized estimate of the different, transport of hazardous waste for public safety.
Yeah.
Then the weekend that we're not gonna do, we're gonna try to do that every other year, just so we have a sense of where the money is going.
You all
Yeah, on the tour that we took the other day, if I understood correctly, Chuck pointed to a bunch of hazardous waste stuff, talking about the cost of it. But he mentioned an individual, the name escapes me, came by and dumped off many, many cans of paint at the town garage.
Right.
That's just wrong. And some of it was latex paint, which if you let it solidify, you can just throw into regular waste.
Yeah,
So
that's what Gail told me.
he shouldn't be letting, he needs to say no. When people drive up and say, I'm gonna give you a bunch of paint, he needs to say no to that, not say yes to it. Because we then, as a town, paid to dispose of that on kind of an individual basis, whoever that person was.
The challenging part is sometimes they'll just pull up to to the building and they'll just be stuff sitting there. So I think that,
But that's not what he
Leaving stuff
described.
in.
He described a person talking to him, a
Yeah,
very persistent person, but
We probably should have some sort of a statement go out,
Right.
maybe in the calendar. or
well, I got a
on the
text message from
website.
somebody today asking when's hazardous waste weekend.
So what are you proposing here, Speaker? Are you proposing leaving the whole amount in?
For right now, yes, and then I think this week, we should have the rest of the information. We went through 2022 and 2021 and put the information in and, tried figuring out all the details and, once I have a better understanding of that, it could be adjusted. But if you look at, 2020, the previous years, there were still expenses without us doing the hazardous waste weekend.
Go ahead.
So the other question that I brought up, under 3040 equipment maintenance, we got $600 in there. I was wondering about if we had a contract with the compactor service or any type of maintenance schedule for the compactors.
Not to my knowledge.
is that what that's for?
Because I thought when we got the new one, when we got the new compactor for the cardboard, I had asked about getting I don't care if it's a contract or not, or it's just to have them come over here either annually or biannually to service and look at all our machines. I don't know what the cost would be. So-
Who does it? Who cooks over?
I can't remember the name of the company.
I can't either. We replaced at least one, if not two, of the garbage ones, because they take it all right.
Yeah.
Take a beating.
So just that
Cardboard
oil
ones are a little
change.
bit less strenuous.
So I recommend we put that up to 2,000. Because I think if they haven't been, if she doesn't know that they haven't been looked at, I think we need to have the money in the budget to do the maintenance on those.
But you have a question?
I would agree with what Bo said, with the 2,000, subject to whatever number Vika comes back with, once we find out what contract we can get and that kind of thing. For a placeholder for now, trying to keep it going, I would say put 2,000 in there for now. And then the reason I raised my hand was we also talked about under line 4,000, Bo had made a suggestion to recommend $20,000 to paint the beams in the building. For line 4,000. I hesitate to bring it up, I think spend $20,000, but it's in the notes.
I can give you my opinion again, would you like it?
But I know I did. It
Go
was
to Wal-
$173 for
go to
spray paint.
Walmart, buy some Rust-Oleum, get up there and spray it.
I would take the paint that they dumped off with chalk, use that.
I know they're gonna need to be painted soon, I just can't quite get myself to do it. for
Did
some-
we have a quote from somebody, Bo?
We used to, it was
From
an
like-
old one though.
yeah.
Just 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
I would also suggest we get quotes from some of the local people. It can't be, it's just spraying it, not as fussy as doing interior trim. Something's got his lift and
So are you making a proposal? You guys
Or
making a
that's
proposal?
I am not proposing that we put anything in there, I'm only mentioning.
Okay.
Which line are you on?
I'm only interested in financial tonight.
So 30/40, the proposal is $2,000. I agree, Bob agrees.
I'm fine with that. Only a 1,400 increase, right?
Well, last year I was at $1,800.
Just not knowing exactly if you can call a company that would service that.
Oh, yeah, I'll look at the contract when we bought the last one and see what we have in it.
Any other comments on solid waste? You're all clear that for now, we're leaving in 5130 at $6,000 until we hear something different. Are you clear on that?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jen.
So if we haven't spent the 18,000, I mean, 1,800 from last year to have those serviced, why would we just use that to get them serviced? That would give you a whole nother year, and then we wouldn't have to budget 2,000 for next year.
I don't know how much it's gonna cost. Might cost 1,800.
I think
But I'd
we're making
rather-
a point that if we get them
We-
serviced between now and July 1st, then yes. you
Then we
can-
can drop it off next year.
I would feel it's gonna be-
But I'd like to have it done.
Jen, was yours a question, or were you proposing 1,800 instead of 2,000?
It was more of a, should we
Question.
get a quote, see if we can get it fixed this year, and then put that amount in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're not making a counter proposal, Jen?
Nope. not
Go
really.
ahead, Carol.
So, I just, on 50/20 and 51/10. Given where we are in 2023,
Mhm.
Dika, you were gonna get back to us about what the story is there.
Yeah,
Why
all
the
of,
increase?
all of these numbers as far as, what we spent for hauling, for what kind of hauling, for how much barging, for what kind of hauling. We have an Excel document that we've gone through every invoice from last year and figuring out what those costs are.
So you're gonna send that to us?
One, yeah, I'll give it to you guys and show it to you once we have it. Tim's been helping me work on it and
So when,
looking through it.
because that's a, that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
So when do you think you'll have that?
I hope that, so what I'd like to have it is for the next budget, which is what, next week? Not for the department, but for the next budget to have all of this more accurately adjusted.
Well, yeah, and it would be good for us even to just see the Excel spreadsheet, then we can, that will help us sort of, because I'm concerned about, we might be underestimating, and I know Bill has some good objectives to help, improve solid waste, but I just, that's a bit, this year we're gonna go over, right?
For the bargain line.
You will
yes.
for bargaining.
Bargaining, we're all.
So,
But, yeah,
and so I think we really need to look at that closely and decide, is that an adjustment to operations, or is that an increased cost that we need to budget for? So that's the big question for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, so people should understand how much solid waste costs is. And maybe we want to start thinking about a pay for as you go kind of thing.
well, I think the biggest cost that we're seeing, the dumping is one thing, but us having to barge off cardboard. We're barging up cardboard at a higher rate than we have prior to COVID
A
because
lot of cars.
Right.
everyone is, and so I think that's where, but that's, like I said, it's, hopefully that will help us.
Right, but I do
Figure
think
it
it
out,
might
yeah.
help us, decide on if we need to make a policy change on charging people for cardboard disposal, for example.
My baler idea would have been fine.
Whatever
We could
it
have
is.
stacked a whole lot of cardboard in the.
This statement may mean nothing at all, just so you know, and it may not mean anything. When we started the town of Sheboygan in 2007, Cumberland, Bill Shane and I sat and decided on a budget for the transfer station of $167,000 a year. We actually were able to operate the facility for about 149,000 for a number of years. And now look at it. And
Well,
I think it's just because we're growing. There's a lot more recycling, there's a lot more volume, and barging and trucking and transportation is up.
Well, the people, I think, since COVID, them staying for an extra month.
I just wanted to point that out for historical non-value. Any more questions on solid waste? Okay.
Yeah, one more.
Sure.
Do we have a sense of how construction waste
Yeah.
cost versus revenue breaks out? I don't see a separate line here.
well, that was kind of my question too. was
We had some information that we
had to provide.
when we changed the fee structure,
Right.
we were using numbers, just,
Yeah.
I think it was like,
C&D is-
yeah, C and D was
Yeah.
way off. We
Yeah,
doubled
per
it.
ton, things like that,
I
yeah.
remember the cost of use, the cost to pick up those went up dramatically. I'm just wondering, shouldn't we reflect that in our actual budget instead of having to do a special study every few years and remember to look at it? In other words, we've got, but we don't have a separate line for cardboard either, so.
Yeah, as far as the individual breakdown, kind of really hard. I think we just estimated like a 30-yard dumpster or 40-yard dumpster, how much that should cost us. And then we kind of guessed on one load that just left, and we're like, oh, well, we paid X amount.
Well, we did check in with Long Island, our rates were significantly lower at one point. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that, I just wanted to remind you, I'm not sure how practical it is, but one of the things Long Island was experiencing was the cost for just purging waste, and that's one of the issues they wanted to talk about. So,
Anything else on solid waste? Page 16, Department 4400 is miscellaneous mainland. It's basically the amount of money that we budget to contribute into the I'll call it an escrow fund held by the town of Yarmouth for future improvements or replacement over at Cousins Island. Questions?
In my notes, I wrote down details, we asked for details on the responsibilities. Who's responsible for what?
I emailed Yarmouth to get, because one of the questions was to get, where the total fund is, so I emailed Yarmouth, I have not heard back from Nat about it. I did look at the stone wharf agreement between Yarmouth and, Shebig. And, this money is for the wharf itself and, the road. And there is a paragraph in there, which I'm happy to send it to you guys so you can read it yourself, that states that if any repair is done on the ramp or the float that is Shebig, those expenses are solely separate. So from that agreement, it does not appear as though, because in here, I think there was a question of, can some of this money that we're giving to Yarmouth be used on Cousins Island, for an 80-foot ramp and upgrade floats? In the agreement, it doesn't appear like that as a possibility.
Yeah.
So is that a reasonable amount, 20, so we put in 20 something, I mean, how is this number derived? Where does it come from?
We
Deal.
have an agreement and a document that says every year you're gonna pay this amount. And
But it's changing year to year, so why is that?
Because that's the agreement that we have. I have an agreement and a piece of paper that has the years and the amount that the town Shebig is going to pay.
Probably
And it's a
based on-
4% increase every year.
Probably an index thing, right?
4% COLA.
4%. And are we,
Cost of
are we
work.
getting, I mean, do you feel, so it seems like that could be a lot of money.
Probably $500,000 in there.
There's a lot in there. And we're supposed to get a report from Yarmouth.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that when I was
That
reading
sounds
on it,
reasonable.
it said it's supposed to be an annual report, so
And
That would be for the ultimate replacement.
I think they only put in like $7 or $8 grand a year.
I think it's a percentage.
Sure,
something like
that makes sense, because we use it more than.
Okay,
Yeah.
Then I don't know when the renovation of the turnaround was happened. Did some of this money go towards that? I'm
no,
not
it's
sure.
deal.
No, the state paid 80% and Cumberland paid 20 at that point. So do we have questions on the amount or anything?
No.
The next page, obviously, we're going to be taking up page 17, this coming Saturday, 9 AM is when we will take up contribution. Questions?
Just one question on that, so I don't have to ask it on Saturday. So I see that there's two different line items, one for rec and one for CRC. So the kids' place. So are those, I'm a little confused. Are those, I thought the rec center administered kids' place, and why did they show up as two separate items?
I don't know if I can accurately answer that. Can you answer that?
I remember when it happened.
Yeah.
But I don't need to know right now, because I don't want
Yeah.
to slow down the meeting, but so I would suggest just somebody provide some background, because it seems weird, because I think the the kids' place employees are CRC employees, right?
I don't know.
They are, yeah.
I don't know if there's a separate budget for kids' place, maybe,
They're,
or breakdown.
the separate budget for kids' place is not public information. Or when asked for a breakdown of kids' place, one of the kids' place committee members was told that is not public information. So they're kept as one budget. I believe the reason it was put in separately was because I believe at the time, the select board said, we'll put this in here 1 year.
Right. I think that's right?
I was part of that decision at the time.
And then we
It's
said,
a hot button item at the
it was
time.
indeed. And then there was one more year and I'm for supporting, I'm really for supporting kids' place. But I agree with Carol's question about how those budgets are intermingled.
Right, so I guess we'll get to that on Saturday, but any background you have on kind of, if we have a memorandum of understanding with the rec center, which I thought we did, maybe you could send that along. So I won't, that's it, because we should keep going.
Yep.
Try not to have 3 hours.
We have a reversion clause, I'm not aware of it, which is no small.
My husband thought there was some written agreement about things, so anyway,
I'm sorry that I don't know that.
and he was one of the ones on the once only thing.
If you don't mind, I'll go to page 18.
Yeah.
Department 5810 is general assistance. This is basically required of the town to have something in there, a placeholder of $500. The main contribution to benefit the community is on contributions on page 17. And that would be the 3166, the $7,000 payment to the council, just for your information.
So is that heat assistance?
That's to be used. And then they report back to us how it's used. They obviously don't attach any names,
Right.
but they say, you know, this much was used for oil, this much was used for wood, this was used for food, this was used for medication.
So the 500 just in there because we have to.
The 500 is a placeholder. Any questions on page 18?
Nope.
Page 19, kind of the same thing, a little different. Department 5910, health services, we are required to have a health officer by state requirements, $2,000, I believe it's a stipend probably.
We pay it quarterly, $500 each time.
Anita Anderson is still the health officer.
Yeah.
Questions?
No.
Page 20.
Yeah, actually, one question, just so I understand.
Yeah.
What are the duties associated with that? Or
What?
are there a set of duties associated with that?
Health inspection, she may have to come over and inspect the kitchen. at
Swimming
the inn.
pool,
Oh,
The
okay,
pool,
got it. Makes sense.
and Yeah, does she
Oh,
come every
I'm
year?
glad.
maybe water temperatures and
Yeah.
food service.
And if somebody,
Thank
if there's a problem, she has to respond.
Yeah.
Page 20, Department 6200 is cemetery. Not aware of any changes that we
It says
proposed.
no changes.
No change.
Questions, comments from anyone?
Nope.
Page 21, Department 6900, debt service, one of my favorites. Very
So,
self-explanatory unless you, go ahead.
well, I think at the last meeting, we were here bigger, we had a question about whether there would be additional bonding for this coming year. The
Well,
broadband,
there's some,
and so we should be including that in our projection.
Yeah, so excuse me, I've been in communication with broadband, and I've been in communication with Axiom and with the main bond bank to get an idea. And I know I mentioned it before, do have a number that was received. There's $725,000 that is out of the initial warrant article that needs to be bonded. And I have some concerns if the town doesn't receive that full amount in bond, the amount, the bond bank will not, even though, so broadband, $850,000. Last bond, we were only appropriated $250,000. That $250,000, because the town warrant was specific about bonding that full amount over 20 years, that $250,000 is now bonded over 20 years. Interest rate of about $117,000. If we get another 250,000 or 300,000, I don't anticipate that the full 725 is gonna be appropriated to the town. If it's another 250, those two 250s can't be combined, even though it's for the same project, because they're now two separate loans. So broadband is gonna be needing to, because I sent them a long email about this to really bring this up to an understanding that if this is what's gonna happen after this bond, if it's not the full amount, then there should be really a consideration about how that money is paid out or where that money gets, because we're gonna be paying more in interest over the years, bonding small little chunks of a bigger amount and paying it. And so I'm hesitant about putting something in it right now because I just don't know. But hopefully something will come in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I don't fully understand, I mean, I remember your explanation about what the problem was last time, but I think what would be helpful is to sort of put it in a memo, because this could have a significant financial impact on the town. So if you could just sort of put in a memo, you know, what happened so far and the fact that we could only bond whatever, 175, we still have this amount remaining. Your concern is that if we have to bond it in increments, that's going to be very expensive to the town, because I think we may need to send this up the food chain to Connectivity Maine and possibly even our Steve Moriarty, because I have a feeling the fix, if I heard it correctly, was potentially legislative. So I think we're getting, you know, we need to find out, I mean, we've had a year now, so we should get on the stick to get this resolved. And the Island Institute broadband people can also help us. So if you could just put it together simply in a memo, I think, I know the broadband committee is involved, but I kind of feel like this is really urgent. And it's a financial consideration for, frankly, this board. So
Yeah.
I feel like we gotta,
I agree, we may have to take this to Augusta.
I have,
We're not the only town that's gonna have problems with this type of.
broadband is one of the things for the March 1st agenda item. And so I've anticipated to have that information to you at that meeting.
yeah, so if you could just write us a summary memo, because that way we can send it on to Connectivity Maine, we can send it on to Stephen. I think we're gonna have to rattle the trees to get this resolved.
I think so, go ahead, Bill.
Two things. One, Vika, you said we're gonna pay more in interest because it's in small chunks. I think that's only logically true if the different chunks have different interest rates associated with the individual bonds, right? Because 3% times 253 times is the same thing as 3% times 750. But if it's 3% for the first one, 4% for the second one, 5% for the third one, then the cost goes up.
It'll vary each year when you're going out to bond, it's gonna vary, those numbers are gonna vary. And that's my biggest concern is that if we're bonding $850,000 and we have that clear
Right,
direction
right.
and the full number, but with this round,
Got it. So the rate's gonna be high. Yeah.
yes,
So second question, thinking back to when we voted in broadband, I thought the deal was the town was going to pay the bonding, but was gonna get reimbursed by Axiom from the monthly fees.
correct. And that was one of the questions that I raised to broadband and Axiom recently with this discussion. And the agreement is that once the operation is up and running, then they start collecting money, Axiom starts collecting money, that they reimburse the town on a quarterly basis. And so my concern is that we're gonna be, because the project is now delayed because of shortage and everything, we're now gonna be potentially paying earlier, you know, before they start paying the town. And they need to be aware that the interest rates might be significantly more than what was anticipated in the original discussion.
I agree with making them aware of that, but with the contract that we were promised at town meeting, there should be no financial penalty on the town for broadband being late regardless of the reasons. When all the ins and outs flush out, the taxpayer should not be paying any of that bonding expense, especially just because Axion's late with the project. So that needs to be part of that conversation as well.
I understand, I agree.
That's gonna be a Zoom conversation.
So broadband is, I believe, planning to meet next week. I believe it's gonna be a Zoom discussion and then
June to the 28th at 5 or 6.
I'd have to look. Yesterday they were trying to finalize the dates with Chris and then she was gone today, so I'm not sure what came of it.
Do you expect Mark from Axiom to
The
participate?
plan is they were gonna bring him in, yes.
Thank you.
And Nika, could you send us the bond schedule for the amount that's already been bonded?
Any other specifics, questions on any debt service line item or total?
The one other thing we had talked about at the last meeting was, can we, and this would be a lot of work, but can we produce a forward schedule that shows 2023, 2024, 2025 on out for as many years as we're bonded, what our obligations are, what our financial hit is for all those years going forward?
So what I have, and anybody can get this information, what I reference is Maine Bonding produces these, schedules.
Okay.
And so this is what, I just put them in each budget and I have a copy of them. So it shows the dates that they're due, the interest, and what the amounts are due by the town. So this is what I follow.
That's individual by bond.
Correct.
Yeah, what I was talking about was if I can get those, I'll put them into a spreadsheet where we can see what things look like on an annual basis going forward. But are those electronic? Can you email them?
Yeah, I can scan these in and email them to you, or you can, anybody can get them.
Oh, and one line.
So if you Google Maine Bonding and you go
How about
applicants,
that?
I mean, you can look, anybody in the state of Maine, you can look to see what their bond bank is.
And Vika, quickly, I realize that the final amount of dredging and the dredging situation is still another outstanding item. And how, in your opinion, might that relate to this? Debt
Unless there is a significant increase
Right.
on their end.
We should be okay.
We bonded a good chunk of it.
Yeah,
I would have to look back at the numbers, but there is,
yeah,
I believe, like less than $20,000 difference of what the town would have needed to
yeah,
raise between 1 year and the next.
yeah, I think we got.
And that's with the
enough
hope
permission.
that it doesn't. I
We
mean,
tried to get enough cushion for permission from the
Yeah.
voter.
Yeah.
And Army Corps' goal is to put that out to bid and try to make a move if they get somebody that will do it late this coming fall, I think.
That was the original idea, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Any other questions on debt service?
No, but I feel like I don't have a good handle on
Well, I know
it. I'm a little concerned
the
about
bond bank thing and the broadband is not helping either. It's a little bit worrisome at the moment to me.
it. Okay.
Page 22, Department 7500, benefits and insurance. Don't think we,
Yeah, we did have,
what do we have?
well, the question was health insurance because it's actually gone down from 2023.
My specific question remains, I'm sorry, Rick, I don't mean to be thick-headed about it, but with health insurance and life, item 1210, I asked you if $103,703 was possibly still budgeting a tiny bit high from when we had that little glitch that time when Marjorie left and we budgeted high. You gave us a really high number and then we brought it down. You remember that?
For the benefits,
For the health insurance.
1210.
And so my question to you was, if you look at 2021, it was 93,000, 2022 was 85,000 shy. And
Zoom.
then it was budgeted 106,000. I asked you if you thought we could budget around 100,000 for this upcoming 2024. Your answer was, it's based on the amount of employees and per employee. So
correct.
my question to you is, how many employees do you think would qualify for health insurance and how much would it be per person? 12,000 or something? Is there a number that you use?
So I have an Excel document which tells me each employee, what the monthly cost is.
Mhm.
And the percentage that's funded by the town versus them.
Yeah.
And then the cost associated with it.
So how many employees do you think
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 employees who receive health insurance benefits. We have 2 employees that opt out of the benefits, but they receive a monthly insurance incentive as a result.
Okay,
And then this also includes a monthly and an annual fee to a company called Group Dynamic,
yeah,
which is the reimbursement company because of the high deductibles.
so the 2 that opt out get a few thousand for some sort of ability to put those
It's
in a
yeah, it's
plan.
a monthly stipend
And you know that amount roughly, or don't you?
for
The opted out individuals, how much they would get?
individually.
Yeah.
One is 900 and the other one is 1,080
Per year or per month?
for the year.
So that's only $2,000, right?
Yeah, it's prorated because they're not full-time employees, so they don't qualify for the full.
And how much would the other 6 people cost us?
Approximately $17,000
So,
each.
well, I mean,
Give or
it's,
Sorry, what did you say?
Approximately $17,000 each.
So what does it cost for a single subscriber for a full-time employee?
it depends whether they're individual or a family or.
But I
two
mean, we
adults.
just pay the single subscriber fee? Or do
We adjusted based on the employee that we have every year.
We offer an 80% family too.
It's 80% for family. If it's individual, then it's 90%. Here, I can pass this around and you can look at this, or I can send these to you.
Yeah, it'd be good to see, but I guess, I thought
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get this technical.
No, that's fine. Last year when I did it, I was struggling to figure it out, and it was Marjorie who showed me the Excel that she had used, and I used that, and what had happened was for the fiscal year 2022, it was under budgeted, but then because we had people leaving, people coming, and people not utilizing health insurance, that helped us not go over, so.
So where did you get this, could I ask you where you get that $17,000 number from?
I just took the 103,
that's not. totally fair.
and then just, took out $2,000 out of that, and then just divided that by 6.
So my question, one more time, are you still of the belief that $103,703 is not too high?
I mean, you can knock it down to 100, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Okay,
I think the gamble really is in, so the group dynamic, each individual, that qualifies, so each employee, it's up to $5,000.
Yeah.
And so most months, and that's where Marjorie had helped me figure out, kind of, you take the average based on what was used and you add that in, but it could be possible where, each employee maxes out for 5,000 and that's what it costs the town, but that obviously hasn't happened, so.
yeah, but my motion, well, not motion, my proposal is to knock that life and health insurance number down to $100,000 from 103.
I have just one quick question before we go any further with that. Vika, what do you think 2023 is gonna come in at by the time the end of the year is?
I'm sorry, what is what?
2023, the year that we're in now,
Yep,
it's currently at 76,485. What do you think it's gonna come in at for this year?
I don't know, I would have to do the math, I can't, I don't know.
I think it's gonna come in more like 103.
We also just had, the challenging part about this is we're on a fiscal year, the health insurance is on a calendar year. And so we take a wild guess on 6 months of it, like prorating it. I'd have to look at the percentage in here. And so this year, we just had somebody that dropped off from the health insurance. So it might come in at a little bit lower than what was budgeted this year, so it just, and then we had, somebody that Kathy came in, so it's,
Yeah,
I'm okay with what Mark said.
The other, change is, like for FICA and Medicare is the bookkeeper salary is now 60% town, 30% school, and so that's where that FICA Medicare, because I had to do another Excel document to figure out what the bookkeeper position cost us with the salary, with the FICA, with the Medicare, with the insurance.
I mean, 60/40.
Yes, yeah,
I
sorry.
think you said 30. So we only have two of us so far that have agreed to the 100,000, so we either need one more or you three don't agree, which is fine.
I don't agree. I don't want to cut ourselves short as far as
Okay,
health. and life insurance.
Jen and Carol?
I guess I guess, Vika, if you could send, I'm not sure I'm clear.
Yeah.
I saw 125,000 at the bottom of that spreadsheet, so.
Yeah, so that's the maximum cost that it could be if you really add anybody who has the benefits and who qualifies for it. But I said that the HRA claims for 2022 were $6,000, but they could be up to, 5, 10, 15, 20, $25,000 if everybody maxes them. But last year I put it in the budget and then Marjorie showed me this. So I take the average from the previous year and I add that into, instead of adding the full potential 25.
You're basically playing the odds, you're doing an actuarial table, you're guesstimating what it's gonna be because you don't know, A, what the rates are gonna be, and B, what the participation is gonna be.
But did I hear you say earlier tonight that it was up 12%?
Health insurance, yes,
And that's incorporated into this 103.7.
correct. Which was,
I guess what I'm having trouble with, and I'm fine with the proposal, but I don't quite understand what makes up the 103,703. So it's a little late to kind of, for me.
Yeah, that's okay.
So
We
maybe,
You can leave it where it is.
well, for me, it's
Keep an eye.
more just, I would like a little more explanation at some point. And maybe it's just want to send it to me, the sheet. I guess I think I'm reaching my brain max.
Yeah, why don't we, is it okay to move on from benefits and insurance, or does anybody have any other?
You haven't heard from Jen yet. so-
No, I want to move on to greatest.
We're gonna leave it for now.
Okay.
okay,
I would propose that we skip the school stuff, obviously, and go to page 35, streetlight. Did we change anything there? No?
No, and I offered,
Nobody,
not yet,
nobody shot any streetlights out or anything?
not yet.
No, but it was pushed over to the climate action team.
Oh, yeah, right.
So you may get some questions about streetlights.
and we did update the LED lights
Yes.
2 years ago, so that was one
All
of the
of
questions
the
that.
streetlights?
And that was my understanding. I got an email a couple months ago from CMP asking permission to see there were a couple of lights on Stone Wharf that had been updated, but then they needed to be like even more updated. It was no cost to the town, but they,
Yeah. I
so
thought
my understanding is yes, they're
I
all.
thought they did, and the town also was made kind of by the state of Maine to replace the lights on Chandler's Wharf. But
I did notice when I did some investigation on this is just a quickie. A lot of towns have taken over ownership of their streetlights, because we must, so they actually, they operate them. So when this committee looks into it, I'll ask them to find out, because I think financially in the long run, that could be beneficial.
And my question relates to that. Where's the meter for the streetlight electricity?
I don't know.
I got a crick in my neck from
I
looking
think
up
it's
LEDs everywhere.
It's probably one of those, we're just gonna flat charge. them.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
guessing that's what it is. To Carol's point, that's.
It used to be 12, 13 grand when we first started.
Yeah, okay, so
We'll work
that
on
committee's
that.
on
We
it.
do get a bill from CMP every month and it's,
Yeah.
I'm sure
We
it
do.
is.
But where's the meter?
It is, I think, the flat.
Okay.
All set for tonight?
Yep.
We're on page 36, Department 8300 contingency. This is the amount of money the select board has the ability to expend if they deem necessary. We have proposed the same amount as last year, 14,000. Any questions or comments on that?
Good with it.
Page 37. 7, Department 8800 is the outer island tax that we have to pay to Cumberland from the secession. 50% of that, it's right now at a number which could change, I assume. Questions, comments?
So we keep 50% of the taxes collected, they get 50.
Yeah, we lost that battle big time.
Well, but if taxes on some place like Hope Island go up, we're gonna see half of it. We're not gonna
That's
see
why I said it. Question? No? Next page 38, Department 8900 county tax. This is a formula based on
So this is the new number?
population.
No,
So,
that's a big increase.
I just got this a couple of days ago, and what happened was, Cumberland County has gone from a calendar year to a fiscal year. And so they had reached out to all of the towns like a year or two ago, asking, because of this, and I can send this to you, but it's, each February, the county sends out its warranted 28 communities in Cumberland County. This year will be no different, though slightly more information will be provided. Enclosed, you'll find 2 warrants representing counties 2023.5 GAAP 6-month warrant and the first fiscal year of 2023-2024 warrant. And so each town was asked individually how they would like to be selected between 1 and 5 year, depending on how fast they want this 6-month gap budget to be paid. Town let them know, I believe Marjorie was in the office, Marjorie was still here, that it would be split up in 5 years. And so this current expense is for the 2023-2024 tax warrant for fiscal year, $198,621,000. So it did go up. But then for the 2023.5 tax payment, 1/5 of it is $17,906, which is why it's assessed.
Thank you for that. Questions? Yeah.
Don't have to explain that to anybody, do we? Say the kind of.
One time hit based on changes this week.
Yeah. So thank you all for your participation so far with the departments. I think we're getting pretty close overall. Saturday, we are meeting here, if you don't mind me saying so, Bo, we're meeting here at 8 AM.
All right.
Meeting here at 8 AM, going into executive session for half an hour amongst ourselves, and then probably another 20 minutes, half an hour with the town administrator. 9 AM, we start the discussion with the people asking for contributions. And then I'm going to make them move it right along. So get your questions in line if you've got budget questions, certainly. Not going to cut people off, but we need time for capital. And as far as capital, I'm not sure if we're going to dig into this. Do you have an opinion on this?
No, I mean, Herb and I have worked together on trying to streamline it a little bit. I think we have some work to do I think following sort of some consolidated, some decision on what we have for capital will update the plan.
Okay,
And Vika and I and Herb can work on that. I think it's not worth spending time in our budget meeting on that. The only thing I would say, the plan says 7,500. I think we should change it to 10 grand.
that's an easy one.
But, what was my question? We should notice the executive session, right? We should have an agenda for an executive session on
Yeah,
Saturday.
It's already known.
Oh, it is?
Posted,
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So our improvement list that we have now, you obviously have page 39 on this budget, second draft of this budget report. I also myself go through the reserve savings account balances and titles, because some of them, a lot of them are not included, and some of those may be important to some
Do you have
people.
an updated one?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask Vika. This one I have, Vika, says updated for a period of December 31, 22. Is that what yours says?
Mine's December 31, 21 to January 3rd, 22, so,
So do you think that this is,
Which I say,
I will email you, so we would have gotten one at the beginning of February for the, yeah.
okay. I'm having trouble with my printer. Could you just stick something in them?
Yeah.
I'm just having all
And
kinds
I
of
think,
problems.
I could be wrong, but I believe, I think, in the last meeting, the treasurer's report, the most current one should have been in there.
Okay.
So, but I will email, anybody want it printed?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I believe that you have shown the select board the quote from All States Asphalt for chip sealing the new roads that we just did, as well as possibly double chip sealing this road out here from Roy Hill to the end, but that would not happen until fiscal year 2024. So there's no paving or chip sealing plan for this season, just so you understand,
And the plan would be in what calendar year, what season?
2024. So the estimate is about $139,000. So the only decision we have to make is, do we want to put any more money into the paving reserve in preparation for that? Or do we want to wait and do it all before that fiscal year?
Yeah, good
Okay.
question.
Any other questions on budget before we adjourn?
One question, what time do you think we'll finish up on Saturday?
What
I'm asking
time what?
because of the poll.
Finish up?
Yeah.
Well,
what time is that?
11.
the contributions, I expect that one or two of them may take a little longer than some of the others without being insensitive. So I expect the contributions discussion to probably go from 9 to 10:30. Is that a good guess?
Yep, makes sense.
How long these last.
Are you just going down to watch and
Nancy, good lunch.
we could take a half an hour break or something?
We've gone to 12 and we've gone to 1, so.
Did you have a goal?
No, I just needed to tell my wife whether I'm.
Yeah. I mean, I would guess we're not gonna get out here until 1 o'clock. I hate to say that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're
I
gonna start
know.
at 8.
I know we want 2 and 3 hour meetings, but
Budget time.
these capital discussions we get.
That's
I have
fine.
one question.
So
So,
back to you. All right. Go ahead.
so what I gave you today was all the information that we received from the people that wanted money. I gave you the one-page copy of that particular department, just because I wanted you to see it updated. I wasn't sure how much of a change was needed on here, but I do plan to update this tomorrow, probably when there's a snow day and no daycare, and I'm working from home with a kid. And then email it to you, so then you have a more current update with this, in addition to just that one page that I
So-
put out today.
Which,
Do
when you
we
say
need-
this, you mean the entire budget?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do we need her to do that for this, or wait till we go through the capital and the
Yeah,
and
you
stuff?
can just wait.
I mean, why do that just to adjust numbers?
well, I mean,
It's time,
if you
so.
see the
Yeah.
final number, but I guess the changes from tonight aren't that drastic, that it's gonna increase or decrease. by large number.
Typically, we make your teenagers the babysit before you go to
She's gone for the week.
I know.
So Vika, can I ask you very quickly, I mean, there's not gonna be anybody here speaking, I'm on page 17 of the contribution. There's not gonna be anybody here talking to us about the visiting nurse and hospice.
Yes, and I put that information in your packet.
They're
They're
coming?
requesting 1,000.
Oh.
No, they won't come.
They won't, probably.
No, they won't come.
They won't,
No.
right?
They never have in the past.
Okay, and the Island Commons, it's very unlikely that anybody's gonna come to make sure they get the $1,500.
There's a letter in there from them, yeah,
Usually we get a letter from City Strand.
yeah, we got it from them.
It's just to help them out.
Did did you email us that today?
Email what?
All the.
No, the packets that you had in front of you,
You just
when you
gave me
came
the-
in.
Oh, in
I
here.
thought so.
Yes,
Oh.
yeah, so those are all the copies of everything that
confused too, I thought.
was requesting a contribution, and the changes I put in on that one page, so you could see how that department is adjusted. There are two organizations in there that aren't on our list, who are asking for money, and who aren't asking for a specific number, so.
Sorry, I didn't look at it.
Any other questions? All right, so we're, there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All
Carol, second. Workshop. All right, never mind.
right, I got a question for you, I don't know.
Why is it in a regular meeting,